Okay, we'll call the board committee meeting together. Kathy Keithley, Blake Peterson, Holly Riggman, Dr. Tracy Klinger, and Sarah, of course. And I think I even had a note about what we were gonna do first next time. But
We're gonna talk about the achievement that we've gone through all along, I believe, and then we're
We
gonna
did.
achievement.
we need, yeah, achievement, and then we start looking at the goals, which is to look at Tracy's spreadsheet again. So, right. Okay. So we just have achievement, which we would think is the easiest one, but I'm sure it won't be once we dig into it. So achievement is the intentional, determined, and confident pursuit of individual and collective excellence through the development of critical thinking, creativity, and problem-solving skills. Okay, so this is.
So what's STAR? So STAR is a new assessment for reading and math for middle school and for special ed students in high school. So it'd be like an iReady kind of a concept.
Okay.
So multiple times a year kind of technique.
And how is it different than iReady?
It's a
Oh, middle
completely-
school.
Yeah, and it's a different assessment.
Okay, so elementary and then middle. So do we have one for high school or is it at that point? No. Okay, just graduation rates, ninth
Yep.
grade on track and graduation rates.
Well, and at that point, they're not all taking the same class. For language arts or for math.
Right. So thinking back to our conversation last week, I mean, like the OSAS data is a one point in time that could be a piece of a presentation that then you get into Dibbles and iReady for elementary reading and you kind of get that like full picture, and you could do the same for middle school. I do think that STAR, we're not gonna have past data, but
It's new this year.
it's new this year. We just have been piloting it this last year, but I do think it's probably the right tool and would be more of the information that you would want, because it could be multiple touch points in a year.
Does it do grade level type analysis? Okay. Cause then that could be sort of like hey, we're making some assumptions, but here's what I already would have said about our
Yeah.
middle schoolers, and this is where we are now.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it is a diagnostic type, so it's like, are they on track to something?
Yeah,
If it's grade level, I'm not sure, but
Right.
monitor progress, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So the easy one. I mean, again, the overview is, correct me if I'm wrong, the achievement part is easy to see progress on these data points. But what we believe is that if we get safety right, and if they feel part of the, cared for and part of the community, and they know all their opportunities, these should go up.
I think so. In the same way that if achievement begets achievement, so I think they all feed each other. And
Right.
achievement begets belonging, and achievement begets safety.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all, it's not if we get the foundation
Linear.
of safety and,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's that they're
all interdependent,
rebar running through the
Mhm.
foundations of our students.
as in building a strong
Yeah.
structure,
Connected fabric.
connected fabric.
Connected fabric.
Can I move things around on here a little bit? I'm just thinking if we measured or looked at high school with ninth grade on track, which we do get a mid-year point, we do get it after the first semester, a sense of where we're at. With graduation rates, we could throw OSAS in there if we wanted. For elementary, we could look at iReady for reading and for math, Dibbles for reading. And then if we looked at STAR for middle school, we'd have something kind of at each.
Remind me, Tracy, the month meeting, is that, I know you said this last time, is that when they do it or when it's reported?
So I tried to represent when we think the data would be available.
Okay,
So
so
like-
for OSAS, that would be the previous year, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
just wanted to make sure I was.
Yeah,
remembering
exactly.
that right.
And then like length, like if you look at the iReady one below that, I have November, March, we actually assess at the end of September
Mhm.
and beginning of October, but we wouldn't have anything
That's
ready
the
for you
starting
till
point.
November.
Yeah, okay,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I clicked on the on track to English language proficiency. Is that something you'd want us to be able to click on and see, or is it just came with the link?
that is a link from the cert from.
Yeah, and I don't have permission for it. I just.
Yeah,
if
I don't think I do
you
either.
can- You can take,
I think
okay.
it's from copying it from that
Okay.
other ODE survey.
All of what you just said makes sense in terms of elementary, early, whatever, the early literacy, and then middle school and high school. But the Bowley certified students is the other leg to this all-encompassing opportunity. So preparation for graduating is good, but do we want to track? I mean, if Cal is one aspect, isn't Bowley certified? Aren't those the trades?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I don't think I'm as far along the track as you are, but I think there might be something missing where I'd like an alignment toward post-graduation success or forecasted success. I also think an easy monitor here, which would tie to belonging, are those co-curricular and extracurricular successes. I know we want to stay focused on academic, but
Yeah, what kind of,
we have all state performers. I think that's a monitor of a program is serving a student. It's not a,
yeah, it's an
but if you
indicator.
start to build a trend,
Mhm.
and ninth grade on track is a,
That's on the 5.
yeah, but ninth grade on track, what feeds that analysis?
Certain
Because there's components that feed that.
It's credits
Credit.
in ninth grade.
It's
So
all credits.
it's
Okay,
all credit,
Okay.
yeah, it's all credit based. Mhm.
it's not, okay. It's not attendance based. It's not anything else.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. And it's strongly correlated with graduation.
Mhm.
Michael.
So we know that attendance begets better grades and graduation rates. At what point do we look at those combined? Or the effect of one on the other? Attendance versus ninth grade on track? Do we?
No, I mean, we haven't, we have, one thing we haven't brought to this conversation yet. Doing correlational data work, we don't have someone that does that in-house. We have people that can do it, but it's not part of their job. That's not, and Tim Collins used to be like the research and data guy. He's not that anymore. So he helps us with that.
Yeah.
But one of the things we do is we have a partnership with the University of Portland. And so when we have special projects, we send them our data. We meet with them a couple of times a year and they do big reports for us. And we haven't shared those with the board before. And I don't know why not. So for example, last year they had done one on early literacy. There had been some promising growth from that. So we asked them to do that again. Let's see what now another year looks like. So we have some more formal kind of reports where even if there were things that we wanted to request, because the board is wanting that, I guess is what I'm saying, we could request that. Take some time for us to get that back. But they tend to have doctoral students do that work as a part of their research practice. So there are some opportunities like that, that we haven't connected to this in the past. That even could be sent out in the Hughes highlights, like here's the, the report on the whatever, kind of thing.
Could you remind me of when we get that MTSS report? And we talk about the academic to 1, to 2. How, what makes up that tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 designation? What informs that?
In the system for elementary, double the iReady data, STAR, I would imagine will feed that. OSAS does as well, you need for academics, right? And that's where it gets a little bit tricky, and we have to dig into that a little deeper for each kid, just based on what flags something in Panorama as something. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so there's not somebody sitting there saying, okay, based on this student would be tier 1 right now.
No.
It's automated.
It's automated, and then then the team looks at it.
Yeah.
That's part of the team meeting structure piece of that.
I'm just wondering if it's a framework, how much of this is achieved through regular MTSS reports to the board of whether our needle is moving. And then our focus can be more, by tier.
Yeah.
How are,
Incorporates a lot of these things.
how are we shrinking 3, shrinking 2, expanding 1?
And yeah, and I think that's the piece that's missing from our conversation, Kathy, yesterday, we were planning. For upcoming retreat and board meetings in September, and one of the things is attendance work that we're doing. And the tiered responses that we're doing for attendance is part of that work, and so I can see like that would address kind of the regular attenders piece in lots of these things and show you the system behind that, and then how we're doing, right? So I think there is something to that.
Academic tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 is purely academic tests, you said. I mean, it's not attendance. It's not stuff that, okay.
They literally show up as 3 separate things on, you can sort them by attendance, behavior, or academics. But then you can pull up a kid or a group of kids to then look for patterns between those 3 things, where you get the whole picture for a kid.
And when you say teams review those, teaching teams or district leadership?
No, teacher teams.
Yeah. Assumed.
Yeah.
I'm sure I was assuming correctly.
So, sorry, so who directs the digging deeper? Is it the team that says, hey, what are we, or is there any oversight?
That's what MTSS is. So MTSS is the framework and the structure for teams, who meets on the teams, how often they meet on the teams.
Right.
What they do in those teams is all our MTSS framework.
Okay,
So that's
And so-
district provided,
so Michelle Cook,
oversees that.
walk me through the process though. So you have a group of teachers that meet and they're reviewing data. In their conversations, is Michelle watching the conversation to go, ding, 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 we need to see a pattern here? Or are only they saying, oh, what does this look like? Could there be a pattern? What spurs the deeper dive?
So, part of it's the structure of the meeting, but we also have MTSS coaches. So we have some teachers with higher level of MTSS training that are going out to help support hey, have we looked at this? Have you, kind of prompt that questions and keep them following kind of the district system?
So they're in every meeting when teachers meet, or they
Not always. No, they're there when they can be, or when that team needs them. We have teams at all kinds of different levels
Okay.
and spaces. Elementary is a little bit more developed than middle school, and middle school is a little bit more developed than high school. And high school does more of theirs, and they have their 9th grade success team, so they focus really on 9th grade.
Well, and teaching teams in high
focus the
school
work
looks
there.
more like language arts teaching team as opposed
yeah,
to like
yeah.
grade level teaching team.
Exactly.
Or we're
Some
working
of
towards an MTSS leadership team that kind of helps with the like what the work looks like for the building, and then it's teacher teams kind of from there.
And the reason why that to me is important is that if MTSS is the academic and the behavioral potentially data points that really, that we're, if we're going to rest on moving the dial in this category to tell us how we're doing, I really want to understand the process and make sure that the framework is set up for us to get the data, for the school to know the data, you know, to really have this be robust.
And that's where I feel like this conversation could be helpful. I'm just thinking of on the presentation side. I really don't want to see everything in isolation because it's so hard to keep track of a global view. And it begs, from a district leadership standpoint, it begs the board to dive in to the weeds
Sure.
without full comprehension. So I'm wondering, how dynamic is that MTSS academic data? Is it something that, you know, so all of these are on different timelines, but if you showed us the same, okay, here's MTSS at semester end. Okay, graduation rates from last year just came in February, which I guess wouldn't, but let's see. Okay, so I
Well,
ready.
if we saw it every single month, something's gonna get things are gonna get added along the way.
Loose or every other month or so, yeah. And I'm just wondering if we see the same picture. And then the presentation side is, this is what's really informed this change. This is why it's different than last time you saw it, and here's a 5-year trend.
What I'm looking for is, so as schools built their school improvement plan, they were mapping out, we added a piece this year where they are mapping out their MTSS data analysis calendar. And it's gonna vary a little bit by school, and my glasses are not fitting, right? That's why I'm going on my face, right? That's for the world to know.
Picture.
So for example, I just pulled up Gordon Russell just as and we made some recommendations, but we also want buildings to have some ownership. So August, the example is multiple academic data sources. So OSAS, iReady, the reading assessment from last year, just kind of where did we end the year kind of conversation it looks like. September, digging into STAR reading and math data, and digging into Panorama some. October is digging more into thinking C&I rep reports are curriculum and instruction. There's some Panorama with behavior, Panorama with attendance. So it kind of started with academics, then kind of as a little time's gone, it's behavior and academics. That looks like it's monitored in November, so they have kind of a clear list. They come back January, like reviewing SIP plan, updating that. February, looking like, do they have STAR come back in here? They don't yet. They have kind of consistent touch points on those things throughout with a few things kind of added. So that's what it's kind of like at a building level. Another one looks like that one's not done yet. Wondering.
I wonder how much, what the time would be for them to pull that report together that often. Because it's all there all the time, but they're digging into different things at different points of the year and by schools, right?
Yeah, and we'd want
So
district
for
level
us-
data,
Right,
right?
so for us
So
to
it'd
pull a
be-
whole district level data
Uh-huh.
might be a big lift.
Like here's
Good pull,
another
all of
example,
that.
PBIS tier 1 data and attendance in September, benchmark data, which would be Dibbles and ready for reading and math in October. Instructional routines implementation in November, so they've asked for something, they want to be checking fidelity for doing it. December, empty interview data and tier 2 data review. January, PBIS tier 1 again. February, that math and ELA data again. They have a kind of rotate through March, then instructional routines implementation again,
This is
April.
Gordon
school
Russell
improvement.
stuff.
Nope, this is
Okay.
Northwest School. So like they kind of have mapped it out based on
On when the information's available.
when the information's
And the need of
available
their
and the
school,
priorities of their
probably.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah, Okay.
So a couple thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
When Tim Collins was the data person and he wasn't anymore, what
Mhm.
was that change?
Restructuring of, it was basically a position, that position was reduced and he moved into secondary teaching and learning.
And the position was reduced based on what? Remember?
Some of that shuffled different places and that was a specific request of. Yeah, previous.
What I'm getting to is that, we heard at OSBA that successful boards decide what their goals are, what they're gonna monitor, and then they monitor. If you don't have those pieces, you don't know what you're looking for, and you get all this data. Or it's kind of disjointed, and it's really important data that we have to see by law, but it is, just like you said, where does it all fit in? And how is that moving the needle? We have no idea.
Well, and this is really the school directed
So my,
monitoring,
but
right?
if we
as opposed
want,
to us.
if we say this is the priority, I don't necessarily think we have to actually say we can't do it because it's too much of a lift or it's not important. In my view, fund a position, give it its due for a limited time, because we don't know if this, if we pull all this together and it blows the graduation rates out of the water, why, we won't know that unless we implement, and we can't implement.
That's not what I'm saying. I mean, the data is all there.
I know,
Has it been researched to correlate it and do that next step? That next step hasn't happened.
exactly, and it would be a lift. If not initially to create the process by which you gather it and then report it. I mean, I want to be open to not trying to fit something in an already expanded
Yeah.
balloon.
I think I really, I understand that the board goals. There's a driving component to us doing this. I also, so that's one buttress, like we need to have goals that are effective. The other buttress is how many times, as an example, has ODE had us do something that felt disconnected from meaningful work? And I don't want to be that version to our schools. So somewhere in that happy middle. And so, that was so the diving in, that's looking at specific students, specific student groups.
Or specific data.
But the data itself, the raw data, it's not getting scrubbed, right? It's accurate when it's entered.
Yeah, and we have
Yeah.
systems for it. We have our own data dashboard. We have the Northwest Regional Data Dashboard. We have Panorama. We have the data, but we haven't even started looking at the data in a constructive way to understand the data with the board. Let alone go into, is it correlated and what does that mean? And is it statistically significant? We're not there yet.
I'm pretty.
No,
right?
I appreciate that. I appreciate knowing that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty confident that we're building mutually supportive systems that are going to improve the end product. Like the correlation is really telling us a story that we believe is already true,
Yeah.
And so to me, here's how I picture it without knowing all the details and trying to keep pace with the details. But let's say the MTSS achievement dashboard that the board gets is on a quarterly basis. But there's two big highlights out of that quarterly. There's two of the meetings a year, and one of them is probably a strategic retreat, is the big dump. And that's where you've done some of that analytical work behind the scenes and in depth. Otherwise, I'd be happy to hear, what, in this quarter compared to last quarter, we had a tier 1 reduction. We're still assessing exactly what that happened, why that is or what it is. We expect to have that for you at the next meeting. That would be an amazing just cycle that keeps me connected to the data that matters, and I don't know if that's possible. I think what would be really hard is, hey, here February, here's your iReady data. Here's here's star data. Like, that's not going to give me a global connection at all. I would rather have,
That's what we do now.
I'd rather have a reduced.
But we haven't been doing that. I mean,
Some I read, I mean, we've not on a
we
consistent
haven't,
basis. We've just
because I
got
will say
some.
last year there was talk about mapping out different data points that the board wanted, right? And then that never happened.
Yeah.
So we didn't, like, we were all in kind of this like, what do you want? What do you not want? Can I put this on the agenda? Can I not?
I'm
Right?
wondering if, I mean, all of that,
Um,
like you were saying, all of that data is collected. And schools are monitoring it different, but they're all monitoring it at some point in
Oh,
the year, each
yes.
of those. It's just not on the same timeline.
it's
Understandably
pretty
so,
close.
depending on their school and the priorities there, so I'm wondering if we. Quarterly probably feels less of a lift, but to me, even quarterly. We're gonna forget by the next quarter.
Well, and there's not
I
gonna be
bet.
new data, like even an MTSS intervention cycle for a kid is 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, you may or may not see change in that time, or then you make an adjustment and then it's another 6 to 8 weeks of implementation, so.
Yeah, I'm picturing it more like. And maybe it's not realistic to see the different schools, but if we're seeing on a monthly basis, these schools reviewed this. The next month, these 4 schools reviewed this, so we're not necessarily seeing all district data every time except for quarterly. Then quarterly, we're seeing the bigger reports or at our retreat.
You're saying those numbers aren't gonna move quarter to quarter.
They're gonna.
But
Not
each
really,
school, it
I
would
mean,
be, I mean, it would, oh, you
I mean,
mean for the whole
not for
district.
the big indicators, right? Not for the big indicators that are kind of that global, high level, it's gonna be dibbles and star 3 times a year. Beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of year.
Mhm.
So the timing's not gonna,
So what if, well, okay, doubles and star. iReady is more dynamic in that process.
not the diagnostic.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
They're doing it all year, but they only do the
Yeah.
diagnostic every
Yeah.
once in a while, yeah. Which is why at the building level, they have to do what's best for their school, because they're doing it when their students are doing it,
Mhm.
which is totally understandable.
Okay,
I'm just wondering
I
how
have a
we get.
question.
But I'm just kind of chewing on your question about how do we get that other level of data? I think once we know what the data is that we want to collect, doing something like an annual correlation report kind of project with U of P would be the most comprehensive way to, how is this playing out for us, right? Even if we knew what those things were, STAR would be a wrench in this because it's new. We have historical data
Mhm.
that they could look at, and probably welcome that. And I would just bring Nicole Ralston to a conversation to kind of, what does that look like? Because she understands her student capabilities and kind of, they're always looking for these kinds of
Mhm.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the sooner they're pulled into the conversation, the better. So that could be a piece of how do we go to that, like, other depth layer.
Because we could give her the 10 things that we want correlated or that we want tracked and then do the one report.
If we, yes to all of that, particularly at the onset, when you're trying to figure out how it's all gonna come together. In a perfect world, I would not, if the data, if this report, if pulling it together and doing a hard analysis on specific data in a regular basis, on a regular basis, right? Because we have never defined it before. We really want this, but we've never defined it. So we define it, hard definition. The first year, maybe even or 2, is gonna be a lot more time intensive. But if it works and if it's really good, I don't wanna, depend on a partnership that may end to actually have that. But could depend on if it's really good. So that's one thought. The other is, help me bring the 2 thoughts together, because we are in all of these categories trying to find what we can look at and how often we need to see it. And all of our impressions were, we need to see the same thing more often.
Mhm.
And we're hearing that that's not really gonna work, either just in achievement or potentially a little bit more. So either what we want more often isn't pertinent or possible, well, then let's have that conversation. Or, or, what is possible to see more often? And is that pertinent to getting us to move? the
Yeah,
needle?
I, yeah, my. I, I'm willing to yield my hill, but right now I'm gonna fight for it. And that is MTSS. Framework. And I'm only thinking of the history of our presentations that I remember.
Mhm.
And in fairness, I was not at the, I wasn't at Gordon Russell that night.
Mhm.
And I, you
It's
know,
going
I wish,
fine.
yeah, I wish it. Which I could have been, was the right answer there, but. In a vacuum, which is where I function. It just seems easier for the community and the board to digest MTSS. The comprehensive picture is why I floated, even if that picture doesn't change quarter to quarter. To have legacy periods that we can compare to where it did change, and the district is providing the analytical picture. That continuity is worth stagnant information.
Mhm.
If we're just seeing it every 3 months, I don't need the numbers to change.
Mhm.
I just need to see
Need the
them,
conversation again.
and I need to see them.
Mhm.
I
Consistently.
Yeah, I need, yeah, I need to see touch point after touch point after touch point, and it's got to look the same. And maybe the MTSS isn't that picture. I just, when you talk about what feeds it, it feels like it is. Even if it is like one quarter, we have more timely elementary information, or we have more information on this feeder system. You know, here, let's talk about the Gresham feeder system.
Mhm.
However we slice it.
Well,
And then once a year, for sure, we see a global view,
Mhm.
like a district wide.
Was the school improvement stuff? I loved those sheets.
The little plan on a page,
Yes.
yeah,
Was that informed by MTSS?
a lot of that was, so MTSS is this umbrella,
I
right?
know. So when we said,
Everything, like,
Yes.
everything could be under MTSS one
Yeah.
way or another, so absolutely, and
Okay.
there, I
I
mean.
mean, that's, I guess what my question is that a type of a presentation that we could picture seeing from MTSS data on a
So,
consistent basis?
Two different thoughts that I have going through my head is kind of your concept of how do we like in the fall introduce OSAS or whatever from previous year, like where are we starting this year? What do we know from last year? Where are we starting? So that then we can do different updates throughout the year. And then I'm struggling a little bit like with MTSS, would it always be attendance, behavior, and academics 3 or 4 times a year? That would be a lot.
No, academics.
Or so just academics.
I'm just seeing academics. I think the behavioral fits into our safety conversation a little bit. I don't think that's a quarterly touch point.
Okay.
I think I'm purely
Okay, you're
seeing the
thinking just,
academic.
okay, that
element.
helps, that helps me. Because the other thing that I'm wondering, and you're the only one that's experienced this, is I really loved and principals really loved what we did for that board set night.
Mhm.
And what we used to do, where buildings would come and every month, 1 or 2 would present. And so you'd get repetition that way, right? Because all of your elementary schools, there's 10 of them at some point are gonna have a touch point with you about
That
MTSS
started when I
data.
was first on the board.
I remember.
So I wonder if that felt different in terms of more regular.
I think my concern about that, I like that it's more regular and even that it's school specific in some ways. What I don't like about that is it's not the same information.
Mhm.
Schools are presenting their own piece or their own picture as opposed to So then we don't really have comparables, you
Right.
know, like school. And I mean, yes, district wide, but I also think it's valuable for us to see individual schools. I mean, that's one thing I loved about the
Mhm.
school improvement plan meeting was that it was individual schools. And so you got to see the same from every single school, but also the differences
Yeah.
at each school. And I valued that.
I'm only gonna reference Powell Valley as an example here because it's the
Mhm.
school that's connected to me. But yeah, how I see this playing out in the theory
Mhm.
of board work is we have a global view of the district. We get to see those individual school call outs. And we see those comparatively to district. And that is not a job evaluation conversation at all. It's a supports conversation for the board. So that when we see it on the board cycle, when we get to budget time and you're budgeting FTE or an additional support or an additional program to specific schools, we'll have that narrative constructed as to why. And we don't have to bridge that gap for why one school has class sizes of X or one school has a half-time counselor and one has a full-time. Like, we will have already built that narrative off of data. That's sort of how I see it in the cycle, but I know that when that information gets to us, it doesn't fit so cleanly.
But the other aspect of what we did do versus the sit and sip.
School.
Yeah,
Improvement plan.
well, there is a place that they can do that. Is that it completely changes the dynamic of what they're doing and what we're hearing. Because before it's a presentation of, to their credit, here's what went well today.
Yeah, they're highlighting, which is great.
Which is great. And they should be able to have an opportunity to do that in some fashion. But for the board, our work is, where are you?
Yeah.
And what do you
Right.
need? And what was, and again, it's that, it's not a comparison of schools. It's giving me a broader sense of where our schools are. When I can hear somebody say, hey, here's what we did. Oh, that's another principal. Oh my gosh, that's interesting. We had the same issue and this is what we did. Or we're really struggling with this. We're seeing kind of a pattern here. I don't get to have conversations like that. That's deep, that's broader, it's more robust. And the hard part was I didn't get to hear from any other school. It was just my little cohort.
Quadrant.
Yeah. So,
I
but
mean, we could do it for 4 nights.
Cause I know we would have been there 20 hours,
Yeah.
but.
I mean, that's the thing.
I
It
agree.
gave you that K-12 kind of application of the work.
It
I
was
wondered if we did
far
it more
better, far more
consistently.
impactful.
Yeah.
I wonder if we did it more consistently, it wouldn't have to be so long because it was new to us, to all of us, to do it that way. And
Mhm.
so maybe it wouldn't have to be so in-depth every time if it was more consistent.
But do you know what? That is the key, because it's exactly what Blake said. When we get MTSS, let's just say in your analogy, that we get it quarterly and nothing changes, or, small little anecdotal changes. When I was sitting there, I was trying to remember and recall these long lost presentations I had and what exactly it was that I was listening to, and spending time having to, hey, explain that to me again. What is that exactly? Take furious notes and then try to listen. The more educated we are about the processes available, the more we can hear and digest and give feedback.
And that's my
For what it
reason,
is, that's the key.
The consistency is. I feel like so often now, and really since I've been on the board, when we hear a presentation. Even though, yes, I can say we've had presentations some other time. It's always feels like a brand new presentation that I'm relearning, and I feel like I know a lot about what's happened because I have kids in our school, so it's like, I know what iReady is, I know what Dibbles is, I'm already familiar, so. If I was a board member who wasn't familiar because my kids were right on that, then I would really feel it because I'm already feeling like new presentation, trying to understand, and there's new board members coming on all the time.
Right.
So there's that challenge. I mean, we're sitting here as 3 board members who have been here for a few years.
Mhm,
there could be new board members, and so what can we put in place that's like
mhm.
consistent? It's gonna be.
Can I ask one little clarifying question? When you said the kids were on a 6 to 8 week
Mhm.
process, cohorts or children, students?
It, well, it depends on the tier. If it's tier 2, there's group interventions. So it could be a group has a thing that they're doing. Reading instructional strategy that you're trying, but you continue it for 6 to 8 weeks and you revisit and then you adjust if you need to.
So it's not the
so-
same 6 to 8 weeks for every kid.
No,
That's my
not at all.
point.
It's
That's
not.
my point.
Nothing
So
is
we,
consistent for every single
we
kid.
can
Or
see
that
changes.
That's both.
That's
Mhm.
both, okay.
That's, I mean, that's best practice just in terms of intervention. Yeah.
But that means that we could see changes quarterly. We might not, but we could. But it isn't whether we see changes or not. It's marking the changes when we see them and knowing why.
But it's not gonna change in like, even if you're doing reading interventions for a student as a part of MTSS, and you're monitoring how they're doing, that's not gonna change the Dibbles data would come to the board. So that would just change on that, like, 3 times a year kind of place.
And again, I think, well.
Unless it's numbers of kids that are moving in or out of a tier, but that's.
But you know what, Blake, this kind of gets to my point of we are so focused on the end result. And there are sometimes, like the teaching recruitment, don't judge me always on where we are. Tell me how well we're bringing people in
Mhm.
and keeping them and do the
Get the
process.
growth orientation.
This
Well, that would be
MTSS
That would be
is.
more what you're saying,
process.
which kids are coming in and out of which tier would be more applicable to that.
Well, that's data though, still. It's what is the process?
Yeah.
We are so familiar with the process of, that you're giving this an extra instruction to a kid in reading and it's not gonna come up on Dibbles until this time. That's knowledge for us. It becomes, it's in here instead of, where is that again? That seems like it would be valuable to
But
me.
so I like, if you really wanna understand process, I would go really deep with one thing. Right?
It's not, I
Because, so that's where it's.
guess maybe it's knowing there is a process.
Mhm.
There is a work being
Mhm.
done for this. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think what Tracy's saying is the work is being done every day
Yeah.
Yeah, I
at
know,
a different capacity for each student,
Yeah.
which is
right?
a challenge to report on, but the work doesn't always get documented on those data points until the quarterly Dibbles
Right.
or the quarterly iReady or
Mhm.
whatever it is, the diagnostic. And so even though there could be progress, it's not showing up anywhere on a data point until one of those things is tested, and then maybe it shows up.
But if part of it's understanding the process, maybe it's us even videoing one of the meetings, right? So you can hear it and see it, like.
Yeah, I probably misspoke. It's not understanding the depth of the process. It's understanding that there is a
The
continuum,
accountability of the
Mhm.
process. too.
correct? A
Well, and
continuum.
I would say comparable school to school, because I don't necessarily think the processes of every school are the same, not that they have to be
We're
identical.
getting closer and closer,
Yeah,
like we're striving
and,
towards
but I
more
think that
alignment.
that's something that the board should hold the district accountable for, right? Like, and not saying like, you're doing a poor job, we're gonna,
Right.
but like, that should be a priority for the board. And so you're saying, we're trying to align these things.
Mhm.
The board's responsibility should be checking it to see, hey, how is it coming with that alignment?
Mhm.
Where are we at?
Mhm.
Which schools have we aligned? Where are these schools not aligned? And what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, to me, that should be the work of the board.
And the fact that you have it noted that it's striving for alignment. I didn't know that.
Instructional alignment's one of our 4
Yeah.
big goals. So,
And so that's kind of a good point. That's one of the 4 big goals. And where are we on it?
Although I would,
What's the problem?
when
How
you
are
say
we getting
instructional alignment, I don't picture the same thing as what I was talking about, because I'm thinking more alignment as far as, like, when you say instructional alignment, to me, that's that we're teaching, we're aligning what we're teaching. not how we're, and I'm talking more about alignment of data review or alignment of
Then that's our
behavioral
MTSS.
strategies or,
big
yeah,
deal, right? Like,
yeah,
so we have 4 buckets that
Yeah.
are similar to your 4 buckets where
Yeah.
those things kind of fit.
I think what we're wrestling through, or what I'm wrestling through, is trying, because. And it's pronounced in achievement, because I think so much is focused on achievement.
Mhm.
The easy one.
I was just thinking that. I was just
Well, here's
thinking
the
that.
thing, we're not wrestling through like. Potential data points, it's how
Yeah,
we're presenting. it.
yeah,
So we are
exactly.
further along
Yeah.
this conversation. So
Fair.
it's trying to. Elevate the work that we know is happening in the
Yeah.
district to the public eye in an
Mhm.
appropriate way
Mhm,
through the
So that
board.
they understand, because
Yes.
clearly if we're having this conversation,
mhm.
Yeah,
That's
if
a
you,
great point.
if you were grading. The sources, so you got iReady, you got Dibbles, you got Star, which I know you don't have familiarity with yet. Where do they rank as far as like you say, this is, you're hanging your hat on a data point?
they're different.
Which
They
one do you
tell,
care about?
so like Dibbles measures. Like foundational reading skills. Like, do you know your
Comprehension,
phonics?
right?
No, not comprehension. Do
Okay.
you know your phonics? Do you know? Like how fast do you read fluency pieces of things?
Mhm.
Where iReady assesses the standards, which is more the comprehension piece of things. So really for elementary, you need both. The, and math is math standards. So the value of iReady is it's the same type of data for reading and for math. So there's value in that, but we would be a little bit lost without Dibbles, especially for primary kids and what we're doing. Star, what I think will be a good tool for us that will,
Mhm.
I mean, that's the logical one for middle school. It replaces iReady.
Mhm.
People are encouraged by the information that they get from it and what that's looking like, which is why there's the shift.
Yeah.
And then using that as a monitoring tool for our special education students in high school, that seemed like a nice connection for them to keep being able to monitor students.
Okay.
Those are the ones that are gonna have the most dynamic data, but it's still
Yeah.
only 3 times. a
And the
year.
most consistent, or,
It's gonna be the
Yeah,
most
that's great.
consistent,
I only floated quarterly as an,
yeah.
example. If it's 3 times a year, that's wonderful,
Mhm.
and one time is a big feature type of a. I think,
I mean, I look at quarterly for the school year as still being 3 times during the school year.
Oh,
And then you have
That is
our
true.
planning retreat, which would be the big one, right? So that is our quarterly, but for the school year, that's 3 times. right?
And perhaps our work
That's the
here
9 months.
is valuable when we get more definition into what we're saying and how it correlates from one time to the next. And that we are painting this longer term picture of what we're looking at.
Mhm.
Because I don't know that, I would have to go back and look at the presentations if we've seen Dibbles 3 times a year.
No, we haven't.
So you guys are doing it 3 times a year, but we've
Teachers
only
have.
seen it once.
so,
Because there's so many other things, like that's the other thing
Yeah.
that I'm wrestling with. Yes, we're talking about achievement, but there's 17 things on here that are green.
yeah,
Where do all of those things fit in
She knew off the top.
8
of
or
her head, so
9?
she's
No, I counted,
counting
so I was like, how is this all gonna happen? When you talk about 9 board meetings.
Yeah.
And some work sessions, that's one of these things every time or a couple every time, and how does that then impact things like your board request process? Or some of the other things that aren't related to board goals that are some of the business items. What things can be combined into one thing, and then back to your point, like safety might be one time during the year, and some of these might be multiple, like all of that mapping out is gonna be.
What is the priority here?
in our meeting,
No, as a board, do we have a goal report meeting 3 times a year? I mean, has anybody ever considered adding 3 meetings to the calendar for specific board goal reporting?
Well,
What's
we
the
used
priority?
to meet with greater frequency. Right? We used to be every week.
Yeah, the first 2 years I was here.
We were every week.
Every week.
And yeah,
But-
see
so-
the hard work that your predecessors have
I
done.
think that was also because we replaced DAC meetings with work sessions, and I don't think Patrice or I understood what that was. And so that was part of the, like, we didn't need to replace that meeting with a work session, because the district.
I
I
advisory
do
council
wonder,
had
if you
a-
think about 3 times a year, if you think strategically about August and February and where that lines with where we have data, there could be a August, how did we end the year update, right,
Mhm.
at the retreat. There could be a November, what is our fall data looking like as we're starting the year? There could be February retreat, bump it maybe a little bit later. Where are we at now with this midpoint data? Then we wouldn't necessarily loop back to that in the same way in the spring, because that June data or that end of year data isn't really gonna be available till August, where it's August, November, end of February.
Mm.
And then what are the things that happen in between?
So February to August would be the long stretch, except.
But that's all budget, that's school
Well,
improvement
and
plans,
That's
that's your
graduation
SIP.
and we see some of these, like we
Yeah.
see, sealed by letter C come here.
Right.
We see, you know what I mean? Like we're going to graduations, so
Or do
some
we
of
bump
that.
the SIP presentations with buildings to April? So you've done
Where
a
are they
deeper
now?
dive, we did them the
Yeah, when
beginning
did
of
we do-
March. And April's a little tricky for a building because you're like closing up shop and planning for the next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Where March is kind of a sweet spot because you've had some time to do some things, you have some data. And you're starting to think about what comes
I
next.
would like to not change. I'd like to have some consistency there for the success factor, because it was so good. You
I'm
know,
so happy for that.
And I would say April is also when we have our budget meetings now.
Yeah,
So we're
it's
literally meeting
gets
every
really
week.
full.
Oh, April instead of March, because that used to be March.
Well, it used to be May. So
Oh,
you have
May.
budget 101 in March still, but
I,
then we moved the budget meetings back a month.
okay, when was it in March? It was,
March 10th or 11th or.
Okay.
Second Sunday.
here's a radical idea. What if the board strategic planning retreat
Moves from February to March,
moves from February to the end of March? So you see the school improvement plan. No,
mid-March, it'd have to be mid-March, because spring break is the end. of
yeah,
March.
but
I
frankly,
think that an optimal cycle is that February meeting. This is off topic, but not totally. That February meeting should. I think it would be more useful if the February meeting were aligned to budget practices, because that is the biggest lever the board really has. And,
February retreat
and
meeting,
so if you had the cycle where, school improvement plans are presented, that information is fresh in our minds. But you're also giving district staff, budget staff, the time to prepare their budget. So it's almost like I guess.
So do you think
there's-
February then?
There's some budget law issues. Too.
February would be SIP and then March
when you
would
say
be.
February, you mean
planning
the retreat.
Yeah. I think, we've talked about, for example, equitable budgeting practices for 4 years.
Calendar. I'm just kind of.
And I don't think we are,
Time to see it.
I'm with you.
if anything is okay, I think it's how we're budgeting resources and supports to the building level.
It
that I
is
am
just this big
very
blob of
blind
money.
to. And
There's no
and I
definition
think,
to me.
our cycle as a board should focus on superintendent evaluation. How do we get the information in a timely way to evaluate the superintendent? How do we make timely budgetary decisions on appropriation? Like how do we confidently appropriate? That's
Means we need
really,
the SIP.
that's really
Info.
what our calendar should revolve around, is those two things. How do we get the information to evaluate a superintendent? How do we get the information to approve a budget? Because those, and then policy is the kind of
And that's all
year-round
year.
part. I think anything else is sort of distracting from the board's core work, and it makes us ineffective. So I'm trying to align my brain around that, and that's what this is.
just wondering, this is part of it.
So,
So this is gonna have to be an evening. We're not gonna be able to pull all of our principals out during the day for retreat.
I gotta say though, just keep this in mind. Cause my suggestion was a separate meeting just for board, this review of board goals, because it feels like, just having been 1 year of planning the retreats, there's so much information that we never get to even talk about as a board. That is a little bit of process for us and everything else, and this will take half of it. And then, there's training. So I don't see how what would we have to get rid of on the retreats to give this its due diligence?
Yeah, well, I think this, that's a primary goal conversation. It's where are we relative to our goals and how do we want to shift them? Or what would need to change? I don't think I'm with you. We tend to occupy our calendar with a lot of other things, and some of those things are required of us and some aren't, and that's.
Well, and some of them are presentations that we don't have to do at a retreat, that we could do at a business meeting. I mean, I think that's the distinguishing thing between the things that we just have to approve, which are a lot of things, are more on a business meeting. The reports that we should be diving into and asking questions about are more on a work session or a retreat, which we've kind of done this year, and I think that's been a lot better at our work sessions, where there's more questions, there's more understanding, I feel like.
Well, if we, first of all, we have to float this to the rest of the board. I think knowing, especially for some board members, how the retreat usually plays out, that we have to really make our case for this, and then we try it. Because at the end of the day, is what we're doing with board goals, what we're gonna measure, and when we're gonna measure it, and that accountability piece. If that changes the trajectory of the district, then that's what we need to do, period. There's no debate, right? We have to try it.
Going to Tracy's point on the data. Mid-year data is available at this point, or you're just collecting it?
We are collecting it at the end of January, first couple weeks of February.
Okay. Wild idea. We do a board social the night before the August retreat. What if, like, theoretically, if you're third week of February, to give them space, you did a Thursday night pull out, that's when we're gonna talk SIP, and Friday is the board retreat.
Principals would hate it in August.
Well,
Principals
and
don't.
do you want assistant principal there? Cause so we pick Mondays,
Or that's
like,
Mondays
yeah.
and Friday, we have the board retreat, like that week,
because
so the information is
Division.
fresh.
Ah,
Information's
there.
fresh, because
Okay.
this then would be, March is gonna be your superintendent evaluation.
And budget.
And that's your budget. So February is revolved around those things. August is your year-end data, big data goal review. If we build our calendar around that, it's.
yeah,
I want to hear all of the reasons why it's a bad idea. I really-
No,
he's not even sitting.
I'm
That's
not, well, it's good. I
She's
gotta
got the
write it, I either create a document that everybody looks
Yeah.
at, Kathy, you've experienced this,
Or we do the
or I
white-
write it. And if I had more colors, anyway. I'm also thinking about what you said, is there different touch points where we dedicate chunks of time to this? Do we pick the October work session is board goals? And it's 2 to 3 hours of that. It's
Right.
not retreat, or maybe in August it is kind of that, like, set the stage.
Yeah.
Where a lot of the presentations are on work sessions are somehow connected to this work.
Yeah,
A
I
lot
think
of
it could
times.
condense some of those, because right now we're hearing
you're
them
right.
kind of sporadically, but if we have it
There's
set on a specific time, it might not be a lot more work, it just might be more routine and
You're-
scheduled work.
That's a
You know.
great perspective that we are all doing this.
Yeah,
So now we're
it's not
gonna
like we haven't heard
change,
any of
we're gonna
this.
change the delivery and how and when.
That will
that'd be
hopefully make us more
interesting.
effective. I mean, that's the point, right?
So like, even if I look at last year's board, we did like the grant agreements and stuff we had to do. October became, I'm sorry,
I
what?
started to realize why am I
Everybody's sitting
standing?
down.
Like,
it's called a movement break. That was a little intervention there. Um, like there was a lot of like October. It's Division 22, like we also have to think about some of those things that also take a chunk of time, but those tend to be more business meeting things. Work sessions maybe aren't as documented as well on here, but December was a curriculum update and was graduation requirements review. Like that,
But that's some of this, right? Like it's,
January was an MTSS update.
yeah.
So it,
So if we take all of those things and just change the process in which we're hearing it and the calendaring of it, I don't know that it's gonna be a lot more.
I agree. And one of the key benefits of identifying every October, whatever it is, or it's a retreat, whenever it is, we are going to, our goals connect with these data points and indicators, and we want to see results. And we're doing that 3 times a year or twice a year, whatever we're doing it, everybody knows. The board knows, we know, it's an expectation. It's not just kind of filtering in and out. Oh, we have MTSS. That's what to me makes it more, certainly more visible to the public as well. That if you're gonna go to a meeting 3 times a year, those are the ones you want to go to. I mean,
and are you thinking all 4 goals get addressed all 3 times? Because then I think that's gonna be overwhelmed, shut down.
no, I'd pick one comprehensive, which could feel for district staff like a rehash, but for the board, it's gonna be life-saving. Yeah, so we're gonna get the periodic updates when we get the restraint and seclusion stuff. We know it's connected to safety and there's tangentially the others.
we know it's connected to safety, but that's gonna be a requirement on the presentation. This is connected to safety.
Yeah, and I think
This-
it's gonna be in board docs. It's gonna be on the agenda, right?
Yeah,
That's
so
what we had
we
talked
can
about.
add whatever our new goals are.
And you have,
And then there's a checkbox.
Yeah.
When we add an executive summary, we check which goal it is.
That's gonna feel good.
You're gonna like.
Right?
that.
You're gonna like it. See, I
satisfied.
love checkboxes.
So are you thinking then, it feels like there's the most opportunity for these 3 touch points in the year around achievement?
Yes, I think achievement is where the routine,
Uh-huh,
I think belonging, we're gonna figure out the timing of that.
Opportunity.
kind of in, like,
That's, the seed survey is a
And
one time.
academics is. These are all our focus, but we are an academic, right, like
Institution.
institution, so rightly so, probably, academics should be the one that we're hearing. Most consistently, and then those touch points. And we all value these, obviously,
Yeah,
and need to hear about them because they all do correlate, but.
and so to trace it back, not knowing where MTSS academic data is, for example, for the board goal could be, over a, in the next year or over a 5-year horizon. We want, just throwing numbers because some don't know, 18, 15, 5 split. That's what we want. We want 80% of our students in tier 1. We want 15 in tier 2. We want 5, only no more than 5 in tier 3. And then when it's presented, like, I think that's one where we set a number and we set a goal and it aligns, it orients us to what we're seeing. So if we're at 60, 30, 10 or whatever, which I think is closer to what we are, it's not, oh man, we're failing. It's, like you've said, Kathy, how is this effort orienting, this effort that we're hearing about orienting us toward that success? What do we expect to see out of it?
And growth towards those measures from my perspective, has to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
100%.
Where are we showing
Always.
growth,
Yes.
right? And then I'm also just, as you're talking, so if it was a work session, we also could still invite a couple of principals as a school spotlight or something, like to kind of add a little more like school context.
So and I almost wonder if that, so that it's not occupying our time in work sessions, is coming through like use highlights.
Mm-hmm,
Each month we have a different
mm-hmm.
principal highlight their schools, because that's what those presentations used to be, right? Like,
Yeah.
even if they linked their slideshow, that's like, what's going well at our school? Let's brag on our kids a little bit.
Mhm.
Like, here's what is happening. I would love to see that. I mean,
Mhm.
from a parent perspective, that's more like what I would see in a newsletter. And I know, like, when I get assigned to schools, what I always ask for is, hey, will you start sending me your newsletter?
Mhm.
Because you can just learn so much about what's going on at the school based on their newsletter. And so I feel like that's kind of the board's into. Like trying to listen in.
It's competition.
Yeah. Oh, well, yes, definitely.
You didn't know who you were messing with.
Yes, he did. He did. That gives board members a broader perspective on each school, what's happening, and what kinds of things they're doing, who the
Mhm.
teachers are, that just is so telling about a school. So that I would like to see in a Hughes highlight as opposed to in a presentation. And the only reason I say that is because in a presentation, again, then I think it's we're only gonna see each of those principles, not even like, we couldn't even see one a month, maybe two a month. And so then remembering back, like, I'd rather have that in writing where I could compile and say, oh, here's all of the ones from Powell Valley. Here's all of the ones from East Orient. Here's, and then I can look and see, like, this is what they did last year. This is what they did this year, as opposed to a presentation that to be quite honest, not going to remember because my memory often fails me.
I wondered if that would be, and also not a presentation from a school, but having school representation there so that we could have
And questions would be good from.
questions
Yeah.
and, or, just for us to ask them questions, say, how
Yes,
does that,
that
how
I
does that
really-
look for you? So I would say both.
How is it flushing out? And
Yeah,
I like.
Because then that wouldn't be
versus a lot more.
school related, it would be kind of it's the story behind the.
And they're not having to come with
data.
a presentation.
Yeah,
Presentation.
so one thing I want to add,
Presentation.
Yeah.
rather
Yes,
than having
presentation.
really good board members ask
Speaking
their
of boards.
principals, we should put that automatically on the list. When we're assigned to schools, then there's a list of things that principals do. I'm gonna say that. out loud.
The only thing is when you get assigned the school that your kid already goes to, you get doubled up a bit. So got a lot of news.
Right, well, but also I don't get invitations to my schools either,
Yeah.
so that should be an automatic, but I
Um,
digress.
Well, and I think those newsletters would tell you some of that. Because
yeah,
you
yeah,
see,
yeah.
oh, they have a sock hop coming up, or
Mhm.
they have a,
We have announcements.
so then you can just say, hey, I see you have this coming up, principal, I'd love to come. Sorry, continue.
Thinking of like other business we take to over the course of the year, and this is a distraction, but like we talk about opportunity.
Mhm.
Our charter schools are really opportunities, they're broadening opportunity for our families. Every time we see a charter contract on the agenda, this intersects opportunity and prospectively achievement.
And those are schools you can visit, like, they're not assigned to you in the same way our
Right.
schools are, but you can visit those too as board members.
Mhm.
And board members have in the past, so.
But I'm just thinking, I think almost, I guess I was using it as an example, almost everything we see on a board agenda will connect with one of
Yes.
these four. And if it doesn't, then I think that's a board leadership conversation about why are we talking about it?
Or it's a state requirement.
Yeah, or the state requirement.
Has to be one or the
Yeah,
other.
but even a state
Oh,
requirement,
the state
most of that
requirement.
falls under achievement.
District
which is why
22
they're requiring
standards.
it.
You're right, anything can achievement.
Yeah, we don't want to cheapen it, but
Yeah.
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 District 22 will probably be achievement, maybe opportunity.
It's
I was thinking
awesome.
too, like the
Safety.
recognitions when we bring students in. for
But it is,
Belonging, that's.
And achievement.
Yeah.
but it's always a good checkpoint to know that we're checking, to know that we're looking. We're not just throwing stuff on there.
Yeah.
Someone is pausing, even if the
It's
answer is
intentionality.
99.9%, yes, it's intentionality, we review.
On the achievement side, I'm just vocalizing this again. I have, even with that tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, I don't think that's comprehensive because that really focus in 9th grade on track is not comprehensive. Because I don't think it tells the board a picture of how students are excelling necessarily. You know, if all we're looking at is credits
Yeah,
and not
which could be, you have
not
7 classes with a D,
right.
being honest, right? You just don't get the credit.
So if there's information that would be consistent and reasonable that talks about how within that tier 1 kids are thriving, that would be helpful too. I don't know what that is.
Do you define excelling as beyond academics? Like their
Well,
participation?
it could, we kind of brought that out, but it's good. Are we at 2.0s? Is our tier 1
I mean-
population 2.2 or are they 3.5s, you know?
Yeah, I think it's moving the dial. I think success is making progress, right, in the right direction. And so that's gonna look different for each kid, but if you're looking
see
at a
what you mean.
tiered system, right, then it goes back to what you were saying, it's how many are in this tier, how many are, like, that tells they're moving in the right direction, right?
The other thing that just kind of struck me, because had been starting to have this conversation, was sitting at the comprehensive high school graduations.
Mhm.
And even just the,
Yeah,
what's that called?
Yeah.
Program,
Yeah.
like with all the scholarships, like it's pretty impressive. Like that,
Yeah.
and that is a data point for us, right? Like that is I have them on my desk because I kept them because I was like, these are the things, and not everybody goes to all of them, but like even like the programs
Yeah.
for the board to see like,
Yeah.
wow.
When you've
Like,
got the time to be
that's
there.
and presenting to the board is presenting to the public
Mhm.
theoretically, and so it's, again, that's a monitor, it's not a goal. We're not gonna say we want, you know,
Yeah.
$600,000
Indicators.
of scholarships awarded to our seniors,
Mhm.
but man, we had, you know, whatever.
But if you
But
look
that's
as a
the
parent.
post-secondary success you're looking
Yeah.
for too. We have the data there, a little bit of it. I mean, it's only in relationship to colleges. But that's what we need to report on. Because when you report to, I love that analogy. When you report to us, you report to the public.
Mhm.
And even if they didn't read it then, you can always bring it
Mhm.
back, especially when we're going out for a bond.
Well, and if
This
that's on the
is the
website,
success.
Mhm.
here's the number of students we graduated, here's the number of valedictorians we had, here's the number of
Mhm.
billed by literacy, here's the scholarship dollars earned, like,
Mhm.
those are highlight points for our community, like, look
Well,
what our schools
and-
are doing, and unless you go to a graduation.
Right, but that could also be.
But most people aren't
communications
seeing that
push.
because the people who go to graduations are the people who have students graduating.
They're gone.
Not the people who are looking at, what are our schools doing? Do I wanna live in this neighborhood so that my kids go to these schools, right? And those are the people, especially looking at a bond in the future, like, those are the people who we want to see those numbers, not the people who are graduated and leaving our schools that are already moving on, you know? So I think that would be really good, and as some of the principals gather that, I mean, I've been at presentations where high school principals have shared scholarship dollars
I
and
think Erica shared.
so
it.
they
$3 million.
know.
No,
Yeah, is
it
I know
seems like I
Bruce did
hear it
last
in all
years
ways,
ago.
but we need it from a district standpoint.
And a communication
Grads,
standpoint out to the
yes.
community, 'cause that's a
Um,
huge highlight.
Mhm.
And who's in the military, who's in the trades, how many scholarships, graduates, all of them.
Yeah, because we have information even about CTEs, like how many students graduated
Mhm.
with some kind
All
of
the
certification and,
all
yeah.
the.
No
Scholars of
information about that.
distinction.
Right.
Yeah.
And where now could the community go to find that information? There is no place, right?
How many
So
dual
we're not
credits?
we're not highlighting our schools as well as we could be from a
Mhm.
communication standpoint. We should be pushing that information
Mhm.
out regularly. Like that should be on our website as a bragging point.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, on scholarship, we should sometime talk about, and Chris had actually floated the idea a few years ago of a board sponsored scholarship.
Oh,
And either that's a partnership with GBEA that makes that happen, or
Mhm.
we leverage
I like
budget. But anyway, we should talk about that. And I think it should be aligned to our goals. You know, what are we celebrating?
Hmm.
Um. Yeah.
Reset. I know. Yes.
There's
You-
always-
but you
there's
know
gone.
what, but you know what, you guys? I will put this under a goal of belonging, because we want our communities belonging to the connection, is the connection of student, staff and community to their schools. This
Yeah.
connects the community to their schools when they see tangibly what our results are, beyond just the graduation rates. This is significant, and so this,
Well, and
I'm going
especially
to
because
say.
graduation rates
is
can be
belonging.
read into in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Did the bar move?
Mhm.
What did they do to pass?
Well, yeah,
Did they
Beatty
pass
this
with all
year, but it was
Ds? Did they,
82.
like, there can be a lot of side conversation about what those actually mean. Not as much about these.
Good work. So where are we? Where were we?
I don't know, now I just have a note to talk to Athena.
Well,
Well, that will, you don't need to talk to her now. This, I think this will be, because once we figure out,
Yeah.
we get the data points. Then we have to turn that into goals. Then we have to formulate a document that we present in August. And this will be one of our ideas. And some of the things that I think that we've talked about will be, we'll have the board goals, the pillars, the goals, data points. And how we're managing that, when and what, right? That's the ultimate goal, and a calendar. But there's gonna be some other things that we're going to suggest we implement.
Well, communication would be one.
Right, this is
Yeah.
one of them, maybe some other things that aren't necessarily, under a pillar, but it's an overall change in intentionality of the board. And then we float that, and if it works, it's just like our process, our board request process. This would be similar to that.
Yeah.
So,
So did we land on liking the concept of 3 work sessions committed to, like,
or part of the
like
retreat.
looping back
Those are
to
the
that
I think that's what we
piece
should
about
start with.
if
achievement?
you are confident in it, I feel like I'm in an echo chamber in my brain, and so I'm looking for somebody to disrupt that. But yes, I like the
I mean,
continuity.
I would want to talk to Tim and Heidi
Mhm.
and check my thinking too, in terms of what does that actually look like? I think it's a good starting,
Yeah.
like, place, like, and I know we want some consistency and we want to figure out a system, but we also have to, like, if it doesn't work, then we've got to figure out like how to make it better.
Yeah.
Okay, so you will float, and do we want to come up with what that might look like? And it's not the retreats now. It's gonna be in October. Or are we doing it a
I
lot?
think it would be November. What were the dates? I think it'd be
February, right?
And then maybe
and
August, and I don't know how that plays out with August
Well,
retreat.
Maybe August retreat does include that.
Or September work session is the data update. That would happen in August. And
I feel like August should be. I feel like February should be. The board's eye is on superintendent evaluation and budget. In August, the board's eye is on goals. Just, and not just consideration of how those goals will shift and reflection on where we're at. And
The only challenge I see to that, because I
Yeah.
think we saw it a little bit this year, is then when we're focusing on budget in February. We haven't heard about those goals since August. So then how is our budget reflecting our goals if we're not seeing it until so far after?
So we do a
reviewed that?
combination of both. August retreat is goals.
Yeah.
And we have 2 other meetings that are focused solely on the update of the goal, or at least one.
Yeah.
So it's twice a year. We've gone down to,
Well, November, what'd you say, November, February?
Oh, I
I
see.
have in here November, March and end of year. I wanna pull up. I don't know.
But end of year is
So
gonna
in
be
February,
August.
though,
Right.
we got the SIP
Mhm.
from the schools. We have like a goal review, then our retreat is informed by that. Would it be informed by the goals then? I was thinking that it would be. It just not, we're not considering the goals, we're not like,
But we've lost what you thought to begin with, which is the training and the familiarity with the information. That's part of it, even if the goals don't change or the indicators don't change, that there's that
Yeah.
familiarity.
Mhm.
So I feel good about August, absolutely, that's what we should be focused on. And it's the year-end data and where we're going, clearly. And then we are gonna set in motion the rest of the year's review. November, March. And then we still do the sit or sip.
School improvement plan.
Yeah,
SIP.
The only thing with August, and just to know, is we won't have OSAS data.
Cause that comes in October. So, but on our November, if we do November, we would give November.
So as that kind of, where are we at, kind of going into the year, just know that we definitely could share Dibbles I already star kind of stuff.
Well, that would be,
in August, we'll have graduation data or no? Okay, so
Not till
November,
Jan-
November is really the first.
got it, okay.
Like the cleaned up data from the state, it's all embargoed until
Yeah. Because you
October
got all the
for.
kiddos that graduate over the summer.
Yep, and they're tracking
we gotta
down
clean up that data.
homeschools and when they moved and all these datas, I
Okay.
think it's a mess.
So November would be the presentation.
Yeah. From information
Or most-
from the
most
previous academic
comprehensive.
year.
but you know what, Blake? I think at the retreat, especially when you have new board members, part of that is the review. Board goals is front and center. Even if we aren't getting.
And where did we
report-
end?
On board goals,
It's not.
here is our process. We're just saying, remember, here are the ones that we're gonna look at. It's for them, it's for us. Here's our plan for making sure our board
Might
goals.
be, like,
Review
whole
them, know them, and here's our
Cool.
plan to review. Maybe
system
that's all there
process,
is,
Right,
but we
All
say
of
it
this
intentionally.
it's gonna take a couple hours. Then here, maybe we move towards the kind of achievement data update. So then November this year maybe is the OSAS and
More
fall
comprehensive
data.
Review. Yeah.
Maybe
in the
in
beginning of- Okay,
And maybe 2025, maybe it is, I don't know.
well, fall data would be
You'd still,
2025
it
fall
would,
data.
it would still be this.
That's the
I guess, right?
beginning of the school year. This is
Yeah.
last year. Data, this is the
Yep.
beginning of, I mean, so each year you're kind of seeing last calendar year and part of this calendar year.
We're really not talking about a bunch of new information that the board hasn't seen, it's just orienting it.
It's
Yes.
organized, yeah.
Yeah.
So this might be,
And making it consistent.
but there's not a February work session, but we,
Well, there's a February retreat.
We
Oh,
don't
that's
do
what
a
we don't
work
do.
session because of the retreat,
But
and
we
we'll
could.
do a work session when it's.
I mean, we could add one work session. I'd rather do that than add a week.
well, and then you also add one essentially here
Right, an evening.
for this. Yeah, this was like the second Monday.
And Blake's suggestion was we see that the Monday before the retreat. This
Yeah,
good.
I know. This I would almost like to see before this.
But if you're seeing that before, the Monday before the retreat, then you're adding another.
Well, they did
'Cause
that
would be
last,
separate.
yeah, the SIP is separate anyway, it's always. in the-
Right, but I'm saying, so you would have, you're adding 2 meetings in February then, right? Is the
One
SIP
for the
one,
work
one for the
session
SIP, and then one for the
yeah.
work session actually. focus
Wait,
on
what,
goals.
what's the work session? It's mid-year data?
Yeah.
We don't have a work session
We
right
don't
now
have
because
one.
of the retreat.
But a question is, would that mid-year data be reflected? Is there a place in February we could do it where the mid-year data would be reflected in the school improvement plans?
This, yeah, maybe, like. If the mid-year data check is this, is what you're saying,
Mhm.
right?
Yes, yeah, and so
These
instead of a
things
March
are-
SIP, it's a February SIP
Okay.
with the mid-year data, so we're just seeing a school. A school level deep dive
Mhm,
of the mid-year data,
mhm.
and then maybe at the February retreat. there's a 30-minute agenda item where you're looking at a district-wide. So you saw all the schools, here's the
Mhm.
district-wide view. And then the boards, and then we launch into the strategic retreat, but advance.
Yeah, I think this could be together, because I think this was a lot of data. I mean, they're basing their school improvement plans on that mid-year data, right? Like, that's attendance, that's academics, all of that incorporated into this. So those are one and the same to me. The calendaring of our retreat and work sessions is,
So do a Monday night sit and a Friday retreat is what I'm wondering, but that's a heavy lift for the district staff.
Monday, set, and then retreat.
Friday retreat. No mid-year data, take that. That's what it is.
Still in February?
I think so. I think late February.
Because in March, we have,
Because we want to have the
Budget 101.
conversation in advance of
No, I
the
totally agree.
budgetary.
So
side.
then are we back to then the February retreat would be,
well, and August.
hold on, just right now, the February retreat, because you said originally the February retreat should be budget and superintendent review. And we would do the goal review separately. So are you suggesting to have those together? The retreat will be budget, superintendent review, and the review of goals from the SIP.
Well, I think that the goal information is what's informing the budget and the superintendent.
So
right,
this would be on a SIP meeting, not at our retreat. That would be
Right,
on a
right, right.
Monday night. So the retreat would just have the 30-minute district overview, and then we would do the superintendent
And the
and
budget.
the budget. Probably,
Thinking about
I'm
it a lot.
thinking 30 minutes is,
We
can hardly sit down and have.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
So I think you have like a quicker presentation, and then because we've already heard all of that on Monday, it's still informing our
Yeah,
budget and our
and they just bring in the big,
superintendent.
okay.
Yeah.
This is what you're thinking, right? The retreat becomes this,
Uh-huh.
the big picture district update of the achievement data.
After we've already heard the SIP on Monday, yeah. Because then in March, we also have budget 101, right?
Every week.
And then, well, but we moved budget to April,
No, the budget 101 is in March.
okay,
And so those, because of spring break, we have back-to-back meetings at each
so
week.
it's board meeting, budget
Business
101.
meeting,
or
it's
work
usually a
session.
business meeting. Yeah, budget 101 work session, and then we're off for spring break.
Yeah, and then April, we have every,
And then April's the same, business meeting, budget committee first meeting, work session, second committee meeting.
So a piece of information we would need on the budget side is from Dennis on budget law and budget committee. If that. I'm not sure what would be available, from a disclosure standpoint, I'm not sure how subtle the conversation could be, but I'm not saying that it couldn't be. It's like what I would
What
picture,
law wise are you?
well, what I would picture there is kind of almost a draft budget message. Working in this budget message is like one of the last things you do in budget creation, but like a preliminary budget message, like this is tentatively looking to go with the budget
Okay.
from the superintendent. I would just want to make sure that we don't step out of any.
Could that be worked into the budget one? Cause I know budget 101's kind of like, here's the role of a budget committee, but could that be worked
Well-
into that since we're already meeting on that day?
Yeah, like what I'm kind of. So this
I'm
is,
not ready to go get my chart pad.
this is here.
Or are these different color?
So you can do
Pen
Hannah.
here. You want a pen?
No, I just want a pointer.
Okay.
So trying to think through this February, because one of the other things that we had kind of hoped to do over the years is make the budget committee a more functional committee
Mhm.
that's not just showing up 2 weeks,
Mhm.
2 days of the year. There's a little bit that makes me wonder if it were an agenda item that this is the preliminary budget message. And when I say budget message, that means this is how we're these are the strategies we're trying to achieve with our budget this year and performing it. If the budget committee is invited to attend that portion of the strategic planning meeting, where it's an update for us, it gets them more involved. Then March is budget 101. This is the function. And we are purely consumers of that. Well, and I'm not sure that's.
My biggest concern would be their availability to come, well, I mean, you guys would
During the
too,
day.
but their availability to come during the day.
Yeah,
because most of them have full-time
She
jobs.
did like a 12 to 8
I think
retreat.
one is retired.
well, I don't think it's a requirement.
It's just
I think it's
It's
an
an
invitation.
option, yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
But-
It's informational. It's worth trying.
Maybe. Unless we're weighing in, but I don't think that's our function.
Well, and it
I think
could,
that's
if
oversight.
they're not, I mean, we could invite them and we could also have it as a presentation or a packet or something that could be emailed to them if they weren't in attendance. To look at,
Yeah.
so that they're still getting the picture that we're trying to paint, right?
Mhm.
Which is the budget goal, you know, the goals we have with the budget.
Should this whole conversation be part of the board goal conversation with the whole board
Yes,
in August, like?
yeah,
talking about how the cadence and the
Yeah, we're not
routine,
deciding.
the-
We have to
but I
do
think
that.
we need a 90% draft or an 80%.
Some kind of starting place.
That's what.
Otherwise, 2 hours. in,
What-
we're still gonna be
what-
talking about this.
What do you hope to walk away with as a result of the preliminary budget message? As a board?
Aligning the budget that we're gonna see, review and adopt. With an understanding of what it's supposed to achieve in the classroom for our students,
Okay,
like a very linear connection
That goal,
between them.
what those goals are.
great.
And at the function, like that's
At
part
the
of it,
level
at
they're
the
supposed to
function
be at.
level, right?
Yeah.
Because that's part of what's hard. Is. How the budget translates into how, like, that piece is.
Yeah.
It's tricky, but
It's tricky
Big
and it's
buckets, like-
hard. And that's why we don't have the transparency that we should have with the
Uh-huh.
public.
I'm just saying it's at that
Yeah.
function level where it's either. Money that's
Mhm.
assigned for students, money that's, you know, for staff and supports, and then money that's community, because I think it's at that function level. This is where we
but-
need Dennis in the conversation.
Well, we don't need anybody to tell us what we already know. There's only function. It is
Yeah.
just these big buckets, which
Mhm.
is not very informative.
Right.
It is not
But-
very
But the
transparent, is
budget
what we have.
message is,
For right
out
now.
of the
But-
entire budget document, the budget message is the substance.
Mhm.
And that's where he gets to express
Yeah.
his strategies for the year as it relates to dollars.
He communicates intent.
Yeah, and so that connecting that budget message and our understanding of what we have to believe is in the budget in those functional buckets. Yeah. Oh, this one.
Okay, well, no, but it is something that we have to define for August.
Well,
We have a lot of,
And when you say that. My thought goes to, if the board is approving the budget.
Mhm.
Then should we play a role in that budget message?
No,
No.
Is it what the
that
board
is
wants to
completely
see
outside
in
of
a
where the
budget?
board
No,
approves budget.
so, and I.
You don't get to dive into the line
city-
item stuff.
Yeah,
From the city level, the city manager prepares the budget message. And
well, and I don't mean the line items, I mean the intention of the budget, what do we want?
But
the
even
budget
the,
to
you
say?
approve the budget,
Yeah.
you don't, like, you could say. I think that some of the funding from this function should move to this function,
Mhm.
but as a board, you can't, like, you don't get to direct the budget message.
well, to be clear, our options are, which is why this is
Yeah.
always so difficult.
Not approve the budget, which
Exactly,
would direct the budget message.
exactly.
Yeah,
Those
I
are our
mean-
options. If we
Well-
don't approve it, then it has to go back and be rewritten to figure it out,
yeah,
how to approve.
and we don't wanna do that.
Exactly. I mean, that's
That's-
where it's like, no, you can't, but you have to approve it. Well,
We
we
have to
really
approve
don't
what we
actually.
think we
but-
should approve,
Mhm.
and if it's not aligned with what we think we
Newburgh
should
approved their
approve,
budgets.
I mean, yeah,
I mean, and that's what we want to avoid. I think that this process would naturally express an appropriate level of board
Care.
input into the budget message, because it's framed around our goals. So if our
Hmm.
goals are
Okay,
front and center, then the
Yeah.
budget message will emerge from it. And I think that's the appropriate.
And how do, I'm just thinking also about the monthly financial reports that you get and how those play into, like, is there something different, more that needs to happen as a part of those monthly checkpoints, touch points that help inform?
Are we required by law to see those on a monthly
yeah,
basis?
monthly.
Nope.
See,
We provide it more
The
often.
The financial.
Okay.
updates.
Because the board
Does it
years
sense?
ago had requested it, I believe.
Oh, really?
I think that might have been a John Hart's thing.
I wouldn't want to, go check out the fence, you don't know its purpose. So I'd want to have a bigger conversation about that, but I think there's really, I bet if Dennis were in this room, he could tell us about three or four different periods that are of significance in that financial
Key
report.
points.
Like once our attendance data is confirmed and we know our weighted data,
Mhm.
once we get the state allocation, like once the economist report is in, although that's a budgetary issue, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think, but it also doesn't occupy a lot of time.
Right.
So,
I mean, we generally,
Just
ask, is
thinking
there
about
anything
some
that's
of the
changed that we
pieces.
need to know about? He's, yay or nay.
And is there a benefit to being transparent and having it out there monthly? I don't know. That would be a good Dennis question.
yeah.
What his preference is.
Going back to this, I just pulled up, so we do an assessment calendar for buildings every year. And the assessment window for some of the data we'd use for mid-year, the window was open till February 16th.
Oh, so it wouldn't be.
So we'd have to, that's why March was kind of that week
That's when we did this
spot.
one.
They had a couple of weeks to dig into the data.
So that disrupts this.
It does.
Did we move, did this get moved to April or did we move it to April?
So when we joined, what is it called?
TSCC.
TSCC, there's a day amount requirement, and so we couldn't meet that, how many days ahead of time that they needed that to review it when we were holding our meetings in May, so we had to move it back to April.
But we couldn't move it back further. And to do this after. We couldn't swap these.
It would be.
That would have to be a Dennis question.
Yeah,
I don't know if they would have the
Time.
budget stuff ready.
Ready for it, yeah.
I would.
Cause even moving it back to April.
Even moving it back to April was difficult.
Yeah.
It added some
Yeah.
pressure.
And superintendent evaluation is tethered to March because that's when you need to notify. So,
It's in contract, well, and I think it's in state law, actually.
Yeah.
March 1st, it's not even just the
Yeah.
superintendent contract.
all
It has to be by March 1st, you have to be notified, or 15th? No, first, yeah, because we are usually almost always late on that.
Yeah, we almost need to do
So unusual for us.
in February. Prior to February, almost.
Well, it's hard
so
to.
what information wouldn't be available in February?
Yeah.
All of
Because
it?
the business meeting is when you put
And
it,
it
and it's not gonna be
dibbles
ready by the
already.
February meeting, and then by the time the March. comes up.
They start the window. Yeah, they start end of January, so kids get back and actually
After
get
the
back in the
break.
groups before we assess.
So that affects the superintendent evaluation component, but it does not affect the budget component. Because March is still preliminary budget message season. Trade-off if we try to push all of the strategic effort to March. Meaning the strategic, so just take the February's the normal month and then March becomes your,
Does that mean you'd move the retreat to March?
yeah, that's
or
what I was
you'd-
wondering, but
Love that. Which just means March is really busy.
yeah. and
Because it's
brutal
also-
on district staff because you got spring break, right?
Yeah, we'll lose it. And I mean, nothing says that you have to have it, you can add a work session any day of the week.
Right.
It's just, you know, those 3 Wednesdays or whatever are already filled.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the calendar for meetings.
I mean, it is a good point about me matching the retreat based on when the data is available that we should look at rather than
Mhm.
having a date and filling it up with stuff that,
and then the data comes later and we don't see it till who knows when, but we can finally get it on our agenda. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Which
If-
then it's.
Could we just talk to somebody about changing the budget to all the data? Let's just change it. No, okay.
Legislation, you need to change the
Yeah,
deadline
this isn't
date.
working for us. You just watch it.
I'm just gonna go to calendar year.
if we,
January 1st.
I'm still, like.
That would be
I think of
problematic.
so many
with
things.
numbers. Come on.
If we had, I think it said March 10th, is March 10th? Was the SIPs. We have March 12th, it looks like as a work session. So we could still do the mid-year data
Okay.
here and then get the district data here instead of doing it retreat.
Yeah.
That would meet that mid-year piece.
Yeah,
And not at a work session. We have a work session there already.
Just
Yeah,
keep
it would just be
February
adding that
retreat
second
might be, just wouldn't do this,
Right.
but you could still do whatever. Or it might be a time where the retreat is focused on some of the other goals. Right, because we're still just talking about achievement, that mid-year point.
Yeah.
There would be referral data, or there would be other data points that could be a part of that retreat.
So Tracy, that SIP meeting it wasn't a gallery walk, right? It was just, they were
Was that
assigned to
Gordon
whoever there.
Russell?
They were
Because I know
quadrants.
years and years ago, they did it as a gallery walk so that the board members would see.
Yeah, prior to me
All
being
the
on board, but at
schools,
Cal, I've heard
Yeah.
about that.
It just was a lot more superficial, like
Well,
Not-
yeah,
not
because you have to like,
fake, but just not as
there's,
deep.
there were 18 schools at that time, so you
Right.
only have, okay.
So this was, they
Go
were
talk
in
to
their
them for 2 minutes or whatever.
they were in their quads, and we went through each of our
So you go into more
goals.
depth, okay.
And they dug into what.
I missed that. 'cause I
Looks
was
like in their buildings.
It was really
It's like,
good.
Yeah, we could ask questions because it was a smaller group.
Okay.
A lot
Yeah.
of information. So would the,
Principals really liked it also. The
Yeah.
feedback at end of year.
Well, the
was
quadrants
really
change each year,
positive.
so that was my
So-
thought, I was like, so typically you would get through that cycle during your 4-year term.
Yeah.
You get.
But it would be like,
Yeah.
it would
one-
be 4 years.
You'll
to
hear
talk to all
another
of every
set of
school.
schools.
But-
Yep, this
Yeah.
year. Mhm.
but you get the information for all of them.
Yep. And we tried to have
Yeah.
a consistent.
so
Right,
Oh.
one pager.
the SIPs
The packet doesn't always give me all that.
were, so would the budget still be able to happen in the February retreat since we are getting the SIPs later or not?
I think we lose that.
Right.
connection, that linear
Mhm.
connection.
And it's, I think the conversation about the preliminary budget and our exchange, I think, was valuable. We cannot affect that. It is not in our purview. However, with having the finance department know what our board goals are and to be able to you know, reflect those some. It's
Speak more directly.
it means to be a more likelihood that they're gonna approve it. I mean, it is interlined, and I think that's valuable.
And the
They
budget
don't have
message
to, but-
should, a good budget message would tie to the board.
Yeah.
What's been fascinating though is our budget message has tied to our 4 goals.
Yes.
The district
Correct.
goals.
Right.
So how all these pieces fit together in that will be
Intersect and, yeah.
different this year.
But I do think there's some alignment, there's a lot.
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this really.
So my point though is that if the message is that we want that for the budget, we just have to put that into a different work session that aligns with the other information that we get, right?
In our February.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Don't not do it at all, just don't do it at the February retreat, so when would we do it?
yeah, I'm questioning if that March 12th work session would be too. I think, I'm not sure I have a real clean picture. What would we talk about at the March 12th work session. So we get the SIPs on Monday.
The district.
That would be that district
the district.
overall.
I like that. Okay.
So and they're
These are
close
the-
together.
The
And then-
district.
And then I sort of wonder, is there a work session on the 19th?
The 19th is, I
Or
think,
that's
that's
the
budget 101.
Mhm.
So the board meeting March 5th, business meeting the 5th. We would, it's a busy month. We do SIPs on the 10th, work session on the 12th, 19th is the budget.
So our work session and our business meeting are back-to-back weeks. There's not a week in between
Because of budget
The
101
budget.
and spring break.
and spring break.
Blake, is
Spit it
it
all-
just to have the budget committee be more functional?
Mhm.
Then it would be valuable for them to see the board goals and how the district achievement. Wouldn't we just invite them again, no requirement, to the 12th work session as guests?
Or, yeah. Or I was wondering if the 19th. I don't want
But
to.
I think the work session would be
Build it
easier.
into them. That was
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, because we got draft, I'm sort of wondering if the 19th becomes the day when, hey, here's your function. I actually, see, now you're rebuilding links. Here's your
That's what I
function.
thought the budget
Here's what the
meeting.
budget process looks like. This is your role in it. This is what our preliminary budget message kind of strategy is going, what we anticipate it will look like. So it's like a two-parter in that meeting. And then there's still that connection between the data and us.
So would that mean that the 101 needs to be before the 12th?
No,
Whether
no,
they,
the 19th is the 101. So I
No.
think you combine them. And the 12th, I do think like maybe budget committee, you invite them in.
Invite them.
at least to make them aware and say, hey, when we talk budget, we want alignment of all of our
Yeah.
major functions in the district. And one way to get that is to have you become educated on this. Here's an opportunity if you so choose, right?
Yeah, yeah. I like that. I think the people in this room that would need to weigh in on this brilliant idea is Dennis and James,
Mhm.
because they're the ones who have to craft the message.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't be looking on the 19th at a real polished message, but by then they know
Yeah.
their budgetary general strategy.
Yeah.
In a broad term. But this does create more work on them. Or accelerates work.
But it wouldn't make Blake cry. So it might be okay.
Yes.
I think it might,
I don't know
well,
if I
I don't
can,
have,
I don't know if I can handle
my
it.
boss writes the budget message and I don't know.
Might make him cry
Probably
is what we're
losing my,
saying.
budget professional. credit.
Okay, so we're at 10:25, just as a time check.
Yeah.
We,
Talked a lot about the calendaring.
I'm trying to start getting this on.
yeah, I've written it 4 times.
She's working on a document.
Well, it's on the board measurable document. There's now a notes and ideas tab that's messy at the top, at the bottom. I'm trying to capture some of what we're saying, at least in terms of.
I do need
Achievement.
clarification though, between 2024 goal system and 2025 achievement data update. So-
I'm just looking at where we're at right now with August retreat.
Oh,
We have like it's gonna be
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple hours to dig
we
into all
can't
that.
implement.
And
so-
a year from now might be
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we're
yeah.
digging into that achievement data at the August retreat.
So for me, that went, why wouldn't we do it the same? But there's no way we can implement
Right,
this August. of
Right, I'm
24. So
thinking
the
short-term,
implementation
long-term goal.
Is 25,
Yeah.
and then from there on out, it would be every August.
Yeah.
Right, got it.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Get into the crazy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm picking up what you're
Well,
putting
and
down.
in August, we don't have all of the data.
We haven't even formulated it.
Yeah.
And technically,
Hasn't even come
the
in.
goal system is approval from the board for this whole crazy plan that we have, so it's either yay or
Yeah.
nay, and then we'll decide if it's a yay, then we'll implement for. And that actually is another part, is that we need an implementation strategy. What happens when for that first year?
And we still need goals.
I really like where we're at. So.
Well, What did you say?
Well, there is
Still need
that.
goal.
Details.
I really like where we're setting though.
Okay, so this is achievement.
Next up is what?
So well, I wanted him to follow his thought first.
I don't know that I have.
Okay, so,
I paused, I thought sufficiently and he hadn't spoken.
can we decide in the
Words
next
coming.
30 minutes, you keep working. Do we want to go back? Do we have another meeting on the calendar?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so we need to have pillar, goal,
Mhm,
And what's monitoring?
and what's
Mhm.
monitoring,
mhm.
Okay,
indicators and time frame, right?
let's
clean it up.
start with safety. Ready? And this is when Tracy gets to a pause. On the seed survey,
Oh, do you want to finish this for a moment?
I think. Do you want to just peek? I'm just trying to get achievement on here.
What are you under notes?
I'm on notes and ideas down towards the bottom.
F, column F.
ABC and starting line like 25. Saying the March work. This, and this also includes a district level data overview. So that's what we would have for an August
okay,
retreat
so
would
then
be.
could you add a line at 41? Oh, sorry, finish that.
No, go ahead.
If you add a line at 41, because then we have the March budget 101. And we need James
Mhm.
and Dennis to weigh in, but that would be potentially budget 101 plus preliminary budget strategy / message.
And that's at budget 101, not
Mm-hmm.
in the February retreat.
Right. I would do it cleanly aligned to the data.
Okay, so budget 101.
So that would be March.
Budget message. And connection to data. So you know, that's what we're. Something like that. So then achievement, we loop back. I think we'll have to decide how the data in November feels for that big picture. Possible. Data. Review. So that gets your achievement checkpoints in there. And if there's things we need in between, then we can figure that out, but we also then see where we have gaps. As we're looking at these other data points to figure out where we can start to just even tentatively
Yeah, I love
plug
it.
them in.
So on safety, can we go there now?
Yep.
Okay, so safety on the seed survey data. That's later in the fall, so
Mhm.
potentially somewhere in the November, December timeframe.
I'm thinking yes.
And I think for a specific goal statement there, I wonder if we're talking participation at this point. Because we're trying to establish things.
Participation in the survey.
Yeah. But
Do
we
you want
talked
to add
about,
goals to this document or do you want to add them on your other document? Do we add a
Add them on
new
our other
column?
document. Just so that
Or
that one's a
column
little bit more
B?
clean.
Either way. What other document is that? Word goal.
The pillars. Okay, I gotta say something.
Yeah.
I would like to keep this. Is there a benefit to keeping this as it is? So they have a depth of understanding of our discussion of all the things we considered,
Mhm.
and then we make the pillars document the
Mhm.
specific
The more formal.
goal.
the more
I-
formal.
Yeah, I think so too. We can put it on both, but I think more formally, we have it on the pillars tab
Mhm.
and more
Okay.
drafty on the.
Mhm.
So participation in, so under safety for a goal.
Yeah. long range for both belonging and safety, that seed survey had some really compelling information. But our current question is the validity and representation of that information. And so we want to start with baseline on that front.
Which means figuring out
How to accelerate participation.
uh,
And that's where
Participation
it
as a
didn't send any
baseline
like
in seeds.
that idea didn't like send laser beams into Tracy's head.
No, I'm
which
trying
is
to
distracting.
capture it.
So that's good.
I'm trying to
Participation
organize
as a baseline in the seeds survey.
But do you see a red flag if the board were to have a goal of enhancing participation in the
as
seed
long as
survey?
we get participation data.
mhm.
Oh,
Mm.
oh,
Oh, we might not.
I don't know.
you don't
we
know
didn't
who
know.
gets
I don't
who.
know what the results
We looked at that.
look
and
like.
You're right.
Okay, that's a big
Um,
question.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Well, then in
And it
parentheses
still might
again,
be the starting place.
then participation rates on speed survey in parentheses, if participation data
And
can be
monitored, yeah.
confirmed
yeah,
Mhm.
and monitored.
Yeah.
and hopefully by August, maybe we could have some of those
Yeah.
questions answered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you want me to start a new tab? Possibly.
Do you want
On-
to peek at pillar tab?
Wait to that.
Oh, there it is. Oh, got it. Okay.
No, checkbox.
That's what I was
Yeah.
doing when my face wasn't reacting to.
When laser beams
That's good.
weren't coming.
I'm, I was just nervous that if you hear us say something that you go,
Yeah.
that's impractical and ineffective, then
Yeah,
I'd hope
then-
you'd say something
Yeah,
and trust that you would.
we'll do.
Referral data. Do we want that as a goal? No, we talked about that being a monitor, didn't we?
Mhm.
Okay.
Just trying to see on the survey if it has.
Oh, you've got the survey. open.
Mhm. Well, I
Are there
have,
specific questions
a
related to
tab.
safety that we would want to focus in on from a long range goal standpoint?
I feel like there were,
Yeah, I know that we're belonging.
yeah, it's all starting to mush together.
I can't even open anymore. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we talked about maybe pulling like a number of questions
Mhm.
from that, but there was a reason we also talked about not doing that because we weren't getting the whole picture, right?
Mhm.
That's why I think we start with enhanced participation. And those questions become kind of monitors at this point.
Mhm.
Eventually, we want them to be
Mhm.
goals if participation can grow.
The survey might also not have the same
Well,
questions for every
And
grade.
it, yeah, it may not by grade,
Because there-
I don't think it
They're
does.
3 to 11 or something.
But it might also provide summary data somehow by those like headers of belonging or opportunity, like.
It's a belonging.
Mhm.
We have a whole page.
And I think this is our baseline data, right?
Yeah.
This is our starting point.
Yeah, we have a whole thing on opportunity, extracurricular engagement. I'm looking at, I think, 7th grade, career and technical education. Not
And-
really
and
on
a point you
safety,
made,
but
Tracy, is-
belonging.
Referral data is being refined for the rollout of the discipline handbook as well.
Mhm.
So will that change what we potentially see, or how do we?
It won't, like, the data that's collected won't necessarily change. Some of the
Okay.
categories on the referrals, I think, are getting
Okay.
cleaned up. I don't think it would change. They're just the
Okay.
data, like, anytime you refine or recalibrate, it's gonna impact your data. So it's
Yeah.
not, we're not gonna have apples to apples, but
Mhm.
we'll have.
But luckily in this time frame, with the new disciplinary handbook and all of that's done, then this is again a baseline for
Mhm.
moving forward.
Mhm.
So we aren't gonna do a baseline a year ago and then make all the changes.
Mhm.
Our baseline should align with the new
Yeah.
process moving forward.
And yeah. And the update you might want is, how is implementation going, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
it might not be the numbers
How
of
far along
referrals,
are
but
we
how
in
is the, like,
Yeah.
an update of what's happened, what's coming next,
And
where are we finding?
a key point is in the challenges part, that we have a placeholder for always looking at the challenges part so that we can refine the process as we go. That's one of the points that they said was so important.
Yeah.
Review the process and so you can change course instead of having it into perpetuity and never getting the results that you want. That's like a key thing that we need to put in our template. Always have a review of what's working and what isn't, and what's the plan. I don't know where you put that, but
It's floating around in there, it'll come out of.
So-
the
well, it's our template.
spreadsheet
'Cause A
somewhere.
lot of the conversation regarding safety, remember,
Is there a checkbox?
is the template that we want everything to be presented by. So that we have consistency.
Yeah,
That's a key, and maybe that's a goal that's not within a pillar, but one of those.
it's the baseline of the whole process,
And I
that's the
need-
framework, and then.
Yeah, and we kind of rattled off some pieces of that I hope will end up in the notes.
Yeah,
So that we're all clear, or we're collecting that together, or we draft something that then we look over with I wanna make sure that
I think
we're all aligned.
I
on what
think
we
I'm
that
gonna,
is.
because my notes are pretty robust, so I might put in the overview. Like the calendar that we talked about, some of the other things, the template, and you guys can just look at it. It'll be a base and then it'll give us so that we do a brain dump a little bit. Might not make any sense to you,
I
but
think I'd
I'll
love
do
to
that.
see the notes. And then I'd love to help participate in writing and crafting a document.
Yeah,
Baseball
yeah.
season's over in a week, so.
Okay,
So
That'll be good.
back to the goal around seed survey, do we want the seed survey? Because of the things that it does cover, do we want that same goal to be a part of belonging and opportunity? Like,
Yes,
do
the
we-
participation right now is,
Yes.
and then we're gonna, yeah, so I'd like, I would propose like a 1 year target of enhancing participation to X% or something. And then with a vision of the 2 to 5 year window, actually seeing positive growth in these questions
Mhm.
specifically. Did we talk about PBIS, MTSS data for safety or belonging? And thoughts there?
My thoughts there would be, the main data point for that would be referral data. Although the other piece that we haven't tackled in this conversation is there is is it a fidelity inventory
Mm.
that buildings have started getting back into, where they're kind of doing some self-assessment of making sure they have all the pieces in place. So that then they know as a building what their gaps are in terms of full implementation of PBIS. So there's some of that kind of data.
Mm.
There is the same thing with MTSS. There is a whole systems health thing where ILT has done a systems health evaluation for 2 years. And we have our buildings as part of their school improvement plans, this year it's 6 of the 22 indicators. They self-assess and kind of dig into that reflective process.
Next year, it's different.
Well, we've kept 4, then we added 2
Yes,
this
yes.
year.
Then you were gonna add.
Yeah, kind of depending on, because 22 is just too much, like that just.
Yeah. I don't know when we talked about that, but I remember.
Yeah,
yeah, I don't have any notes about PBIS that we talked about before.
What are your thoughts on the safety and belonging aspect?
And using PBIS.
I think that same kind of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type of a approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like you talked about earlier. With the goal being getting to 85, whatever the numbers,
Mhm.
as opposed to. and we've talked about this, I don't wanna create a system where,
We're artificially saying things are okay.
yeah, or where we're, yeah. I don't just wanna say we have less referrals, because I think there's a danger in having that be the goal.
Okay.
There's ways to fix your referral data
Mhm.
so that it's better,
Mhm.
but is the behavior, but you know what I mean? So I think the tiered system is a better approach.
But tiered based on what data? It's gonna be based on
Right.
referral data.
Right,
Mm.
that's the trap.
Got it.
Like
So that's the only
referrals
thing
are
that.
the measurement.
Yeah.
Then there's intervention and what, how to pull that data would, I'd have to think about that. I mean, we would know numbers of kids that have intervention plans,
Yeah.
but that's.
Well,
getting-
and maybe so maybe more of, instead of how many kids we have in each tier, I mean, I guess that kind of speaks to it, how many kids are moving from tier to tier?
That's
Would that be a
MTSS.
better indicator? Because then they've either progressed when they're moving,
But they don't move in the same way. Like, once you have your
because
20
it's academics,
referrals,
it's.
well, you're in it, you could be in a different tier
Yeah,
based on
okay.
each of those
That's-
things, right?
Yes.
So if we think about just behavior
Yeah.
data. Once you have 20 referrals or whatever, I'm just making up a
Yeah.
number, like, those referrals don't go away, so you don't really move out of that tier. It's going to be, have your referrals
Mhm.
reduced over time. You still have the 20,
Yeah.
but now
How
maybe
many are you
you've
getting
got
per
one
year,
in a
per
month or
semester?
something. And so then that's where it's like, that's very
But that's not
individualized,
gonna show up, yeah, because it's individual student.
maybe in Panorama, because some of the things does some tracking. But I also worry about us being too dependent on building use of Panorama, because that's still a work in progress. That's
Yeah.
still something that.
Well,
we're
and that
improving.
sort of traces to, I kind of wonder in the back of your mind, for the early rollout of these goals and measurables,
Mhm.
I think it will help the board if you say, we have about some subjective confidence in this data at this point.
Mhm,
Yeah.
We have really, mid-level confidence in this
Right.
data, but here it is.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, your core strategy is alignment of the student disciplinary handbook and practices across the district.
Mhm.
On that, we have, reasonable confidence. The data we're not sure of yet.
Yeah.
And just kind of as we build, I think our presentation in
Yeah,
August could be, here's our year one kind of target, and a lot of it is going to be practice oriented. Data orientation is going to come after that.
Your district team would appreciate that kind of approach too, like, it's not gonna be perfect. Like,
Right.
we're-
This
Yeah,
is
no.
all an experiment. We hope that.
Well, I just though wonder, I agree with all of that. But we don't necessarily have a way to improve the data in the future as far as behavior goes, if our only monitor is referrals.
Well, that's where, so it could be,
I mean, maybe that's
that's something that comes out in a seed survey, or that comes
Okay,
out in
yeah.
survey kind of things where students are like, do I feel safe at school? Do I, feel connected to my peers?
Yeah.
Like, so that's where the seed survey does kind of fit that
a little
layer
bit.
of things.
Do you think we
Okay.
can enhance participation in the seed survey? If it.
I
even-
think, I mean, I like to believe we can, and there is kind of like, I'm not doing a survey, whether that's
Yeah,
parents
100%.
or students or whatever. I think we can try to communicate the value of it and the importance of it to the
Yeah.
board and like see where that gets us.
Yeah.
And what's an acceptable percentage, right?
Right.
Well, you
Sometimes we're
can-
happy.
Well,
to
if we
get
find out if we get
500 responses.
participation. we
And
don't know.
who is participating, and does that align
Do
with
we know
like our
where-
student
That's the
demographic?
big-
Like, that's gonna be a question.
Right. And we don't even know if we have that
There's
in.
some questions about
I
that.
wonder,
for sure.
I wonder with referrals too, if we look at it like we look at attendance data. In that we have 80% of students attending whatever percentage of the time. We could just see we have 100 referrals, whatever.
Mhm.
Do we have 5 students or, district-wide, whatever, receiving
Yeah,
20 referrals each, or do we have 100 students each receiving one referral? Like, how does that data move?
Mhm.
Maybe would be more telling of progress.
that's really interesting to think about.
I don't know if
Also
that's
wondering
easy to
if the
pull.
referrals are,
Because like you were saying, they might have 20 referrals in this semester. Well, next semester, that student maybe only has 5, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? So that movement we'd like to see, but I'm trying to just think of how could we see that? If we're just seeing a
Mhm.
number of referrals, we're not seeing how many students.
trying to think about what I know from like the Swiss reports and just different reports that we have.
Well, and I don't, given the time again, I feel like we're picking your brain to know everything you know right now to determine whether we should put a goal on.
Mhm.
And I think that we need to do either again, we're gonna be up against a time clock
Mhm.
and, we either get some goals here that then we flesh out to see if they stay and if it works,
Mhm.
or not.
Mhm.
Cause we have goal statements and then the indicators,
Mhm.
data indicators of each goal.
Well, and I guess our indicators can change. Right? We want our goals to kind of stay more steady year to year, but our indicators could change.
As long as you're then knowing that you're changing your baseline, if you change the indicator, the data.
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking more as we start up. If that
Oh, I see.
indicator is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Mhm.
informing us,
This
Right,
didn't give
right,
us
right.
what we thought we
Right.
wanted,
then
kind of, yeah.
we need the leeway to be able to change the indicators so that we are getting the information we're looking for.
Yes,
I still think
And
big
then we keep them consistent.
picture referral data might be helpful, even if it's in terms of types of incidents, like even at
I
middle
forgot they're
school.
broken down for 3
The-
categories. or
these are
something.
the top 3 types of
Mhm.
incidents, like at high school, these are the top whatever.
Do you think, I mean, you've been a building principal, do you think we would be at risk of
Don't ask me how to say it.
a
because you already
goal,
said
a
this.
goal
Like,
being,
I'm gonna not referral because I wanna
Yes.
change the board goal.
no, not a board
No.
goal, but
The
if
goal
it's a
to
district
outcome.
emphasis,
We've never had an
okay,
emphasis.
you're a very
that has
strong
been-
building leader. If you were a brand new building principal, would you feel that pressure?
No.
Okay. Because you want to deal with
I
the
wanna help the
behavior,
kid,
yeah,
right?
okay.
Behavior and referral is about helping a kid. And so, and I believe that our leaders are there. I don't think people are gonna be trying to, manipulate the data. Do I think some buildings might experience some differences in data as we try to calibrate? Yes, I do think that could happen. But I don't think that's about trying to manipulate a data point. And honestly, some of that's gonna be how does the board respond to unfavorable data? Does that feel like pressure on me as a building principal that then I'm doing something wrong?
Mhm.
Or is that it's data and it is what it is, and so we're gonna talk about that, and we're gonna always be trying to get better? Like, some of it is, how does this accountability feel? Does it feel about growth for people, and doing the right thing on the behalf of kids? Or is it about making the number look good?
Right.
If it's about the number, making the number look good, that's never been the
Yeah.
approach of this district, so I don't have that same fear that
Yeah.
someone's gonna try to manipulate.
although that's worth stating
Mhm.
as a board
I mean,
expectation.
Yes. Yes.
absolutely, because
I agree.
honestly, when
I
I
think that's
said
fair.
earlier that, what did I say?
A lot of things.
That this is a work in progress and your district
Yeah.
team will appreciate like this being let's
Yeah.
live in the messiness together and as a
Yeah.
team. That is a very different than,
Yeah.
thumb on you, you
Yeah.
shall do this, because I think we always skate that like balance of district system, alignment, data point, and building autonomy. And
Yeah.
how that ebbs and flows on different things in different
Yeah,
places.
I can only admit.
Yeah.
So the goal then would be to reduce referral. I'm just putting in some drafty language. Or specific referral types.
Is there 3 referral types, remind me?
There's two. There's gonna be, and we're calling it incidents. There's gonna be a minor incident, I believe, for K-8 and a major that's K-12.
We're
types
focused
of
on the
major.
majors
Mm-hmm.
as a board, right? We talked
Mhm.
about that. Okay,
I think once we see the baseline data, maybe that informs some key places where you'd like to see a reduction. So for example, biting or physical aggression or something like that. If that rose as a high level of concern or a lot of referrals, that might be a specific something that we want to try to mitigate as opposed to no more referrals, right? Or reducing referrals. But again, that might depend on that. And maybe it is fight. I mean, this is safety, so maybe it is fighting and physical aggression. Maybe that is the thing. We'd have to align the words with the new. Whatever.
So there's minor and major, but within that, there's also types of referrals, right? So violence would be one, or insubordination maybe is
You
one.
mark the type of.
So what are
incident.
those types?
I have to go.
Okay.
Get it.
I don't know for not knowing that.
Well, and they're changing, like,
Okay,
it might be.
'Cause I feel like
threats,
we
it
talked
might be
about-
cheating,
yeah,
it might be
that's kind of-
drugs, it might be. Physical aggression, it might be. And some of those are dictated by synergy, so there's all of those pieces, but it might be a physical aggression and fighting, I think would be a specific. Something,
are any of those related to attendance?
no, we don't do referrals for attendance.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so you have that.
Oops.
How are we with wrapping text? Like, is that acceptable?
Yes.
I get to know you better.
Or it takes up too much space. You gotta wrap the text.
Yeah.
I hate when you have to click the box to see that.
So is
Like,
our,
hasn't answered though.
oh, I'm
He's
good with
typing.
wrapping text.
is our goal to have only 4 goals or 3 or keep it small?
I was just
Did
putting
talk
in
about
like a
that, didn't
vision
we? 100.
category in there, so like our
Mhm.
draft for first round, but our vision would be to kind of steer us toward this
Mhm.
long range.
Wrap that goal.
Mhm.
I was just about to go.
Wrap that.
I was like, I can't see.
I got
anything.
everyone's fighting over it.
I can't
Not
do
even
it.
gonna touch it.
Either.
So we need to delete, I think.
And so I think our committee homework will be to go through the seed survey and kind of identify on the basis of safety and belonging, which ones correlate the most. So we feel like, so I'll commit to doing that.
Well,
But-
and each grade level survey.
Yes,
So when I looked at that, where did I go back? When I brought up a certain grade level, it doesn't take you to what looks like a whole survey. It looks like it takes you to science, or I feel like last time it was taking us to
Uh-huh.
language arts.
It takes us to the whole
Today it
data
was science.
reporting. It's not to the seed survey.
But I can go
Oh.
to, well, it says third grade seed survey, which seems explanatory. But then when I go to that, it says language arts. When I went to the other one, it's on 8th grade or something, this one says science.
Mhm.
okay, so
Maybe
maybe,
linked to the wrong thing.
It's like each grade
It's
level
like
is
it
linked
is.
to like
Yeah.
part of it.
Okay, they pulled the wrong.
the
web.
the address
Mhm.
look like.
It was the one in,
Can you scroll to the right, like right arrow? Yeah, survey English. Why is it doing that?
well, that's because I've selected, look, English, Spanish,
Oh, okay.
Russian, Vietnamese.
Oh,
Spanish.
I see. Okay, it's not saying English of a
Okay, so this is the first year of it.
of the seed survey.
Beginning in 23-24 in compliance with House Bill 2656. So it is new.
Okay.
So we don't know what makes me feel actually better, because I don't know what it showed.
It's almost like in different.
So it's
grade
dangerous to
levels, seventh
build
grade is
a-
math.
A goal off of it, but I do think
Mhm.
outside of creating our own survey, this is our best
Yeah.
opportunity.
To start.
Okay,
And we can dig into the House bill a little bit and see.
What the wording is for that requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the risk is
I'm reading a good House bill.
change the survey or don't continue with the survey, then we would have to adjust. So, but we can look, I guess we can just look at each of these. I mean, I don't know how it does say math, science, or language arts at the top. But I don't see how the questions are related to those, so.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't results at this point. It's probably linked to that page because that's where a page, there will be a link for seed at some point or something.
We did see results before. When we were looking at this.
So there was some Multnomah account.
Given that
Maybe that was the Oregon Health. Service.
each of these goals is dependent on information that we have. How do we populate the rest of the goals in each of these pillars? Is it another meeting? Is it homework?
I think we got 15 minutes. I think we're moving. I think we could at least get to a draft level before
Okay.
this and then start to,
Then I say we get things down
Yeah,
without,
for goals.
taking apart everything. And then we get a little feedback, before we prepare our talking points for the retreat. Is that fair?
yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Where's our opportunity?
So
mean-
for opportunity, we had talked about kind of the impact
Yeah,
and getting Tim to dig into that. He's on vacation this week, but.
so maybe we leave opportunity for now.
Or we could put some general like.
Are we putting regular attenders under safety?
That's where it was.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't even see that. I didn't see that.
Mhm.
And anywhere that there's X%, I think is a collaborative number.
Mhm.
We try. Um,
So move on to belonging, is that what I'm hearing? Till we can talk with Tim.
Well, what we're asking him for is correlation. That's not, correlation isn't a goal. So is the
Mhm.
goal to monitor,
But we talked about a generic goal statement that said how many improve the students who are engaged in one of CTE, extracurricular or AP.
something
You
like
know,
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Said it,
Mhm.
but that's on the assumption
That
that
we
one
can
of those
get
three
that.
things will get them to graduation.
Yeah.
But that's the same as the seed survey. We have to find out if we
But
can
let's-
get those. So I think we still draft it.
We
as a goal
state that
statement.
if it can be
Yeah.
done.
Mhm.
And if it can't, then yeah, we'll have to reassess that.
And I guess a question is, how would we want to make sure our goals are recognizing all of our students too? So like SPED, LE, like
So we'd want it disaggregated.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
Part of the goal, then maybe one of the goals is, does the participation data represent the student
Yeah.
body? Like,
Yeah, so what kind of a goal do we want there for belonging? Is
Uh,
it all 9 through 12 students are engaged in one of those? Is it?
Well, and does that provide opportunity for our SPED students?
Right, that's what,
How many
well, but I think
are
that
involved
it's
in CTE here?
at some point, you can't apply the same exact expectation on, at least in that
Right, so
one
what does
area.
belonging look like?
Right.
So then we talk about. So maybe it's not all 9 through 12 students, but. You know what I'm trying to get to, like, what is our goal?
Mhm.
Yeah, what would be a fair goal that would include?
Well, and is it just increase? That, do you need a number? We don't know what the baseline is at this point.
I would want to increase by something. I don't, I don't want to just, yeah, but,
Mhm.
yeah, so
Then
right now,
increase by
Blank
X percent. Participation in.
and
whatever.
is it 6 through 12 here? Is that what we're looking at? Or is it 9 through 12 at this point?
Well, I mean, all of these things aren't, I mean, there are not AP courses.
Right,
Mhm.
6 through 8. Electives are only available depending on the school you're at. I mean, they don't all have the same electives.
Then let's stick this one to
CTE, I
9 through
think it has to
12.
be 9 through
And if
12.
we want a measurement for middle school, then we come up with that separately
Yeah.
and sped.
Mhm.
and, or,
Yeah, I mean, I think
So
our goal
including
should address all
clubs,
grade levels, but I don't
right?
think
Yeah.
that goal.
that would be
Middle
co-curricular,
clubs.
clubs are
So
co-curricular.
middle have clubs,
That's true.
middle has sun. Elementary
And some
has sun,
sports, they're just not comparable
some.
across.
right. Mhm.
Then do
It's,
you,
but the
but then-
measure is how many kids are connected.
could
Right.
you then do the breakdown of 9 through 12, and it's these categories, middle school are these categories, so your base data is by elementary, middle school, high school, and the data points are different, that's all? Is that too much? I think that if you add K through 12, you're going to dilute the data to where it isn't pertinent.
Yeah,
to
I think
me.
it has to be separated. Because I'm even thinking in elementary, there's even less.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
how would we know that an elementary student is connected? I mean, that goal will not tell us that for elementary. There
Right.
aren't clubs, I mean,
But we will have
Very
seed
sporadic,
survey
a
for
couple.
that.
okay,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm fine with that, I'm just the,
Mhm.
that's a
And
challenge.
it's
in
overall
making a
percentage,
goal
not just
for all.
count, right? Like,
overall percentage.
it's 90%, six, whatever the number is.
Yes, but as a district or as 9 through 12, 6 through 8, K through 5, because K through 5. Your percentage that are involved in these things is gonna be.
We have some schools that don't have an after-school program.
Right, I mean, so that's what I mean, some of them are gonna be 2%, so then
And
you're
some of-
diluting
then
the
we
high school data, so you
then we
don't wanna
can't.
dilute the high school data, we would wanna keep that separate, because it's not the same. But then that means we're really not measuring the K through 12.
Is the statement that we make at this point, we're going to start this process with 9 through 12 because that's the reliable data points that we have. And we will, in the future, try to see how we can evaluate K
Yeah.
through 5 and 6 through 8.
Yeah,
Put
what?
it on the shelf for later with an eye toward looking at it, but test the process for this first.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this. Okay, vision 1, vision 2.
And maybe the seed survey is enough to measure opportunity for elementary. Because in the elementary level, these things aren't yet being offered, right? So maybe the seed survey is enough. Maybe we don't need to have the same exact goal for that. age.
Okay,
Yeah, what else do we have on belonging in the? We had,
Was that
We
one
have
for
regular
opportunity or
genders.
belonging?
this is in belonging,
Okay.
so. Oh, oh, my bad.
That was in,
So that should be under all that. Trace, are you moving that?
I am sorry.
oh,
Oh,
we
they're
have
in a
them in different order. Yeah, I'm like, what's happening here?
You took SOBA and made it SPOA. Okay,
because I
so
sorted
did you move it,
home and-
Kathy?
I didn't move anything. I didn't mean to. I
Uh,
didn't mean to. I might have, but
Well, we can reorder that.
Go ahead and
Can I-
change this.
Okay, just don't touch it.
Okay,
No editing. Hands up.
pencils down.
Pencils down. Okay, now they're in the right order.
Okay.
Because that'll be confusing to
Uh-huh.
everyone else later.
Yeah.
And we'll forget and it will reconfuse us.
Because opportunity, we were gonna,
Yeah.
Because opportunity, I mean,
well,
that does speak to opportunity. What do they have an opportunity to do? I mean, I think it's, those are.
yeah, and I actually think
overlapping.
they're under opportunity here.
Yeah, they are.
they are.
They are, so let's
So,
move those to opportunity at this
Yeah.
point.
Or put it on both, just
Yeah,
like we did the seed survey.
Yep.
They speak to both. They speak to opportunity and they speak to belonging,
Yes,
right?
agreed.
Move it, Tracy.
okay.
You
We're
look
adding
like
to both.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, data point.
Yes.
She's
We-
hesitating. She's
just-
like, wait, who else is in the sheet?
My, my notes here, so under belonging for line 25 on the draft is anything that is on the referral form, which is attendance. So I think that's, I'm
Not
not sure.
attendance.
Yeah, I was
Attendance
like,
is not on the
not
referrals.
I think we keep the disciplinary data aligned under safety right now. Is that what you're saying?
No, I just wanted to say out loud this note that says, what is that? What did that mean? Heaven only knows. It just says line 25. Oh, no, line
Discipline-
25.
Just
is-
for personality aligns.
Yeah,
with
aligns with
demographic.
demographics.
For discipline data.
And I think our point was there is that we will note anything on the referral form. I don't know, but somehow it was part of our
Well,
conversation.
part of
last time.
well, I put it on there for belonging because if you are disproportionately referring one group of
Mhm.
students over another, that can impact
got
their
it.
sense of belonging.
Yeah, maybe that was
Yeah.
it. Mhm.
Attendance data, we have as a monitor on multiple, we have that under
Mhm.
safety and we have that under,
Belonging.
so
You need
that
to have
could
a
be
goal
tied to a
statement
goal.
and like checkbox. Applies to.
Like, you're wasting our 5 precious minutes. We have 5 minutes.
Cute.
But I
yeah.
do think that we should have a goal tied to attendance.
Yeah, there is
Agreed.
one under safety, so you're saying copy
So I
that
wrote
one
under
and
safety.
put it under belonging.
Also. Yes, belonging.
And I think those levels probably need to be
Mhm.
specified. K through 5, we want 95%. You know, 6 through 8, we want whatever is appropriate.
95. All the way.
I was like, that's like, where-
That's
We want them
something.
to.
Get a senior there.
For those
95%.
seniors and those kinders that don't.
Yeah, attendance. is hard.
Mhm. Well, unfortunately, I think COVID made it harder.
Mhm.
And that we're talking about regular attendance of those attending
Made
more than
belonging
90%. So we're gonna be in the 50s right now.
Yeah,
And to get it up 2 or 3 or 5% is pretty ambitious.
okay,
So,
okay.
I
That's
will
good.
tell you, I second guess myself if I ever keep my kids home.
yeah,
They're like, are they really sick enough? Should I send them to school?
yeah, but that's why we need to present, like, what are we doing about it in
Mhm.
September is what
Yeah.
we're kind of talking about.
And maybe communication with parents.
There is a communication.
Because
Yeah.
if she's thinking it as a responsible parent, maybe we need to get parents more engaged in the consequences of making that decision easier.
Athena's working on a
What do you
whole
want,
motto, be here, like a whole, like, be here, I've gotta be here, you know?
Oh,
Anyway.
Yeah,
but
like a we need
there's
to
a-
campaign.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a, yeah.
We gotta be better.
In the works.
Like you have to leave in 4 minutes.
Mhm.
I'm not sure we can do this in 4 minutes. I will stand corrected. If you want to throw something on, but we
For
still need a
achievement.
plan for what we're going to do to massage this into a document by August.
August.
I think some independent work put me on a deadline and I will, I'll produce something. Let's go. I leave the third week of July. What if I were able to put together just a 50% draft document by the time I leave? I leave the 20.
Well, will you try to finish the achievement goals for us to review?
Like start using this as the basis, start to create kind of the written document that we would provide.
Okay, so do we all get together to finish the achievement goal? Specifically what that is, and maybe to review the rest while you're working on the 50%, or how are we gonna get to that to finalize this?
Yeah, well, what else would we have under achievement? So opportunity. I think we actually covered what we were going to engage Tim about. If
Mhm.
we say determine baseline data for those 3 enrollment things, I think we're good there. Achievement. We were talking about graduation rates, probably in 9th grade on track.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Mhm.
What else were we talking about achievement wise? Oh, we did talk about like,
I ready,
Growth,
Dibble,
yeah, the
Star.
Makes sense.
Not last meeting, we talked about groups. It's good. It's not just achievement, but like how we're
Mhm.
exposing that.
yeah, yeah,
I think you could say, I ready for elementary, star for middle, and 9th grade on track and graduation rates. As a,
3 point.
wouldn't that be reflected in that MTSS? 9th grade on track would not. On the
In that
MTSS tier
Star
distribution.
and I ready would be,
yeah,
Not
if
necessarily.
stars in there.
Yeah. or assuming.
But a lot of our conversation has been about MTSS, and we do need to have that on the. In the.
So I
goals.
wrote improve MTSS
Oh, yeah.
distribution of academic data
We keep doing that.
by
and
tiers.
I don't see it until you
Um,
get returned.
But that might fail to
Mhm.
include 9th grade on track. Is that in the MTSS?
No, I mean, that still falls into tiers.
I feel like that would be global enough.
That's a global, yeah, it would be global.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it needs to be more specific than that from a
Um,
board standpoint? Or-
Just, so you know, it's 11:15.
I gotta walk next door.
I mean, that's gonna be
Maybe
close,
run.
but it's gonna be measured by all those other things that we talked about. So I think we see how it goes.
Okay. Then we want to have a 9th grade on track goal. I think. Which is separate from
I think
MTSS,
that's
or,
included
oh, you
in
think it's
MTSS.
included, sorry,
I
okay.
think it is,
The data will be, but we then are only looking at what it is. We should have a goal. What is our goal? Do we have a goal statement specifically? The MTSS is the reportable or the indicator. But what is our goal specifically for that?
Well, so what I'm thinking is if we had, let's say it was 85, or, yeah. 85% tier 1, that means that if it were at the 9 to 12 level, that means 85% are on 9th grade on track, is what I'm hearing.
In the academic section of
Okay.
MTSS.
yeah, I'd have to, I think, loop back to Michelle. We certainly could share tiers by level. What data is included in that academic data is gonna be different by level, and we just have to be clear about what that is. I don't know where 9th grade.
The goal of
It's
proposing
not-
MTSS was to actually simplify the reporting for
Mhm.
district staff
Yeah.
and make it consistent for the board. If it's not reflective,
Mhm.
then either we need to have the draft goal as establish a baseline, or we need to get deeper into the weeds. You know, we want I ready to be this,
Separate it out.
but I feel like
I
that
wanna
would be
talk
way
to
too in the
Michelle.
weeds.
Yeah,
And we should probably be clear that this 85-10-5 is just the academic portion of MTSS.
Yes, of academic data.
Good,
Mhm.
okay.
and it would
Oh,
be,
I guess we could say improve academic MTSS distribution. Would that be
Yeah.
Yes.
clear? Okay,
Just because there's the
Yep.
3.
and it's actually 85-15-5. 80%. Usually the
80 is,
Mhm.
oh, okay.
80-10.
I was just throwing random numbers out.
80, 15, 5. So that will be a Michelle.
And just for the board to know too, like when we start this, it would be good for the board to know what is included in that. What informs that data, right? As
Yeah.
This will be a big descriptor because the
Mhm.
most important thing
Mhm.
of what we've talked about is that we need to be focused on achievement and then everything else supports that, and we have one goal. So we need to really articulate that this one goal is all of
Yeah,
this.
it's informed by all of this data.
Yeah,
And
Um,
compiled into the one goal.
It's
I
gonna
think
be harder to
graduation
see.
rates
I think it's
is
gonna
one
be
to
harder
have
to
here.
see growth though.
I agree
Like,
with you.
Yeah,
we're gonna be able to have a better sense of growth looking at specific
Yeah,
measures.
I ready.
So as long as if that's the goal, but the monitor part is that
Mhm.
growth piece, I think that works.
Then we have to have that monitor piece in here. It has to be delineated
Well-
and specified here.
I think this is the next level is we need to start framing out our monitors, which are mostly the spreadsheet that Tracy
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
built.
We just need to
But
pull
for
it
example, a
together.
draft
Yeah.
monitor under achievement would be scholarship data. My goodness, let's spell scholarship correctly. Scholarship data. For example. Oh, yeah, somebody wrapped it. That's terrible.
Okay. I am going to put in the overview stuff that applies to everything
Mhm.
on a separate tab.
Okay,
And I'll do that by the end of this weekend. So that you have it as a reference point when you're drafting your 50% statement before you leave.
Okay.
And
And
then
then are we meeting together before the August?
I think we should.
we'll need to.
Do we need to
Even
find
if
that
it's-
date now?
Yes,
You
we
said you
should.
go out of town when? I go out of town the 19th,
Of August.
July,
Oh, I'm,
till the 29th.
yeah, I'm out July 26th through August 9th, basically. With
And our
11.
retreat's the 23rd, and I'm gone the 11th to the 14th. And the
So, like,
15th.
oh.
So maybe the 19th?
Oh, August.
That's the week of
Are
our,
you gone?
I have not signed up for a golf tournament yet, so I don't have to. This would be a priority. It'd save me some money.
The 19th of August, the
Mhm.
Monday, that is the
But that
GBF.
is the GBF golf tournament.
So
Oh, so
so
you
the
guys,
20th?
So Tracy wouldn't be available.
unless they golfed in the afternoon. Cause
Any-
we are
Yeah.
golfing in the
Any
afternoon.
of that
Okay.
week, I'd be.
Like, well, but you guys typically have your ELT meeting.
And we double starts that week.
What is it?
Daily double starts.
So but that means, so Tuesday, Wednesday. Tuesday, so we have some time to,
Uh-huh. I mean, the earlier in the week would be better in case.
Because the retreat's the
in
23rd.
case- Just in case.
okay, you go and we'll
20th.
let you know. What's your availability?
I'm open the
Tuesday?
20th. I am open right now.
The 20th then.
Mhm.
Is it an 8:30 to 11?
That's a Tuesday.
Yeah, I can make that.
Okay,
I was thinking we might want Michelle and Tim there,
Yeah, to really clarify and hone in.
and I'm not sure they're gonna be
Oh.
available. 'Cause I
Oh.
think that's when they have teams coming back. But maybe I have them come, I can kind of get some feedback from them between now and then, but then maybe
well,
we
keep
have
in
them
mind,
come to that part of the retreat to,
exactly. I
Help
mean,
with
this
the
is all
questions.
draft
yeah.
for the board to see. And
Mhm.
honestly, I think that
Yeah.
our focus should be having a document that is clear enough to present to the board,
Mhm.
even if
so
these
they
are still
understand.
being worked
Yeah.
out.
Right, even if there's some changes. Yeah.
I mean,
And I'm-
say what we're still working
And
out.
I'm also wondering at what point, just as we're talking, I'm thinking about, does it help other members of cabinet or ILT not to be a part of the conversation, but to hear the conversation, to build some understanding, or where is like me just playing telephone with them isn't necessarily going to be the right thing, and I don't know that this is either, but thinking about how we get that.
Yeah, the understanding and
Uh-huh.
buy-in or.
Is that,
Yeah.
you mean, not at this meeting, but at the retreat? To hear the
Yeah,
conversation in
maybe.
the retreat?
Maybe, not all of them are available, but I don't know,
It-
just
it's
thinking
gonna-
about.
It's gonna be a heavy lift for us to coalesce
Mhm.
the hours and hours and hours of conversation we've had to get us to here to bring the board up to speed and with enough
Mhm.
clarity that they can either feel
Mhm.
confident or
Mhm.
make the changes that they need.
Maybe what we do later is invite two of you to ILT or
Mm.
something for a Q&A or something.
Mhm.
Something. I just feel like there's gonna need to be.
I think that's the most, the best use of our time in terms of invite them if they want. You know, they can absorb what we have. And then they come with questions to clarify what they think they already know, as opposed to having us give them the.
Yeah.
Yeah, we go
basement.
to them.
And
to
the
answer
board needs
Yeah.
to be able to
questions.
have
Yeah.
the messy conversation too on the retreat day without.
And we have 90 minutes. Well, no, that's not true. We have two hours, but James gets 10 minutes.
The sound buzzer will
Well,
go
his
off.
should be because it's same, I mean, his are the same ones that.
I know.
we have been.
So what I
Don't
might
ask him any
do,
questions.
I'm off the next 2 weeks, so I get back about the time you all leave.
Mhm.
But I might keep kind of trying to schedule out like some of the things that are landing on the things we're gonna assess and maybe where they might fit in the cadence of the year. So back to that,
Yeah,
those
you're right,
ideas
yeah.
tab. Maybe think about how that fits with the board planner we already have and where,
Mhm.
like, just try to kind of.
Mhm.
And Sarah, maybe it's you and I kind of figuring out how to kind of map out how a year could look.
Mhm.
If we know what the data points are, which we do, we may not have the goal, but we know what the data points
Yeah.
are, and we know when we'll have that data. Then we can start to look at where
Yeah.
there's
Putting
holes.
them in the calendar.
Mhm.
Okay, I do also have another meeting that I need to get to, so. I'm gonna,
Invites for the 20th, so you'll have those. We'll be in the large conference room apparently, because this room is not available.
so the other thing though is that,
It's Tuesday, but you didn't think everybody could be here the 20th, maybe. The teams are back, you said, for the leadership team.
No, but I
Oh,
thought
for
you said you were
Tim.
gonna invite Tim and.
Yeah, I think Michelle has the
If they
PBIS
can.
teams all that day. Tim might be
So we
available.
could still come, but they may.
For
or may-
sure.
And they could also come in for.
well, but
Short time.
particularly because, and again, our goal needs to be this document finished
Mhm.
in some form, and
Mhm.
if he has 50%, then he will send it to us before
Yeah.
he leaves, and then we have between then
A month.
and now to
Mhm.
really dig into it and come back with comments and thoughts.
Mhm.
So that we finalize it, because frankly, if I had to put a priority, finalizing that document and that getting that articulation really clear is
Yeah.
more important than knowing exactly what the data points are.
Because those can be changed. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I agree.
Because part of the process could be, here's the data. Does our goal actually align with what we're seeing
Right.
in the actual data we said we're gonna look at?
Yeah.
But adjust and
Is the
adjust
data
as
telling
the
us
year
what
goes
we-
on to make sure it's
So we get-
even realistic for what the data says.
Okay, so we're going to adjourn.
Yes.
adjourn.
Adjourn.